Chapter 3490. Senior brother Miao Chun, you should drink the tea, Xiaohua said with a smile. Otherwise, if this little monk says it out loud, senior brother will spit out the tea again. Miao Chun was slightly stunned. He hurriedly swallowed the tea, but just as he was about to swallow it, he suddenly understood. Pfft. Just as Xiaohua had expected, the tea in Miao Chen's mouth sprayed out again. Miao Chen cried out in an absolutely incredulous voice. You! What did you say? Xi Hui achieved Bodhisattva Buddha fruit? This Buddha fruit temple's bell was rung for him. Xiaohua smiled and shook his head. With a wave of his hand, the water droplets that filled the sky fell into his hand. With a flick of his finger, the water droplets flew out of the meditation room again. Xiaohua's voice lightly sounded. Yes, it is senior brother Xi Hui who achieved Bodhisattva Buddha fruit. Grandma! How is this possible? This little monk. At this point, Miao Chen immediately understood. At this time, Xi Hui was already laying temple's Bodhisattva Manjushri. How could he still talk about him? He hurriedly put his palms together and said, Amitabha, Bodhisattva Manjushri, forgive this disciple's great disrespect. Amitabha, so that's how it is. Old monk Yongzhong chanted the name of Buddha and sighed slightly. No wonder Abbot looks like he has aged 100 years. When Abbot debated with Sihui about the Dharma, you even praised Sihui's deep roots and said that he was a rare junior disciple in the Pure Land world. Who would have thought that in just a few years, he actually achieved Bodhisattva Buddha fruit if Abbot? Alas, let's not talk about it, Xiaohua said with a smile. As far as this disciple knows, Xi Hui's cultivation in this life is sloppy. At best, he is only in the realm of enlightenment. He only achieved Bodhisattva Buddha fruit because of his previous life's merit. Great Zen Master Jimia should know about this, right? Others naturally can. Monk Yongzhong shook his head. But Abbot can't. This is his heart demon. Why is it a heart demon? Xiaohua asked. Although Monk Yongzhong was old, he was still impenetrable. He said with a smile. Little monk, you should ask Abbot yourself. This old monk doesn't dare to speak carelessly. Xiaohua was helpless. He accompanied the two of them to talk for a while. Miao Chen brought Xiaohua out and had the little novice monk find a guest room for Xiaohua. After saluting, Miao Chen left. Xiaohua pushed open the window of the guest room and saw the crescent moon in the sky. He sighed inwardly. Alas, it's the 22nd day of the 12th lunar month again. Tomorrow is the Lunar New Year. I wonder if the Pure Land has the custom of celebrating the Lunar New Year? Thinking about these days, Xiaohua couldn't help but feel irritated. Now that he had left the Black Wind Ridge for so long, he wondered how the Black Bear Spirit, Lui, and the others were doing. Fortunately, they had set up the capital star formation at Black Wind Ridge before they left. Otherwise, Xiaohua really didn't know how they would deal with unexpected accidents. I have to hurry back. If he didn't seize the opportunity to return to the Dawn Rain continent before the spatial meridian completely collapsed, then he would have to cross the Eastern Sea and Southern Sea to return. That would take a long time, and the outcome would be difficult to predict. Even if the Black Wind Ridge had the capital star formation, I'm afraid it wouldn't be able to withstand the crazy attack of the Copper Pillar State. Xiaohua thought, and was about to release his Buddhist sense. However, just as his Buddhist sense swept through the main hall, Xiaohua hesitated again. Great Zen Master Nirvana was the only senior monk he knew who could come out of the Nirvana realm. He could only rely on Great Zen Master Nirvana to awaken Jianglue. He absolutely couldn't defend him. Forget it. Let's wait for 2 more days and see how the situation is. However, things were beyond Xiaohua's expectations. For 3 consecutive days, he didn't see the shadow of Great Zen Master Nirvana at all. The monks in the entire temple were trembling with fear. All of them were absent-minded and panicked. They seemed to be slacking in their morning and evening classes. Except for the old monk Yongzhong who came to see Xiaohua from time to time, the others didn't seem to know that a lone monk had come to the temple. This kind of mood was contagious. Even the good men and women who came to the temple to offer incense and alms could feel it. After kowtowing and burning incense, they hurriedly left, not daring to stay in the Jinshan temple for a moment longer. Xiaohua now knew where Great Zen Master Nirvana's meditation room was. The door of the meditation room was tightly shut. Xiaohua wanted to go up and knock on the door several times, or use his Buddhist sense to explore, but he restrained himself. On the 5th day, before dawn, Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged in meditation, heard a clamor outside the door. When Xiaohua opened the door, he saw the monks of the Jinshan temple. They were all wearing thin monk robes and holding huge buckets with sharp bottoms. These monks were lined up with solemn faces. One by one, they ran through the corridor, across the open space in front of the main hall, and out of the temple gate. After a long time, these monks raised their hands flat. The huge buckets were filled with river water. They quickly returned and lined up to the back mountain of the Jinshan temple. The back mountain was a large vegetable field. These monks ran to the vegetable field and stopped in front of it. At the entrance of the vegetable field stood an old monk who, although tall, was extremely skinny, almost like a bag of bones. The old monk held a monk's staff in his hand. It was as thick as a duck's egg and several feet long. The monk stopped in front of the old monk. The old monk's eyes were like lightning. He swept the wooden buckets in the monk's hands. If the water in the wooden buckets was not enough, he waved his hand. The monk's face immediately became joyful. He ran to one side of the vegetable field and poured the water in the buckets there. Then, he entered the Jinshan temple from another side. If the water in the buckets was not enough, the old monk would not be polite and hit the monk with the monk's staff. Pa! The sound was very ear-piercing. The monk who was hit grimaced in pain. Then, he poured the water in the buckets to the side and returned to the Jinshan temple. They should be going down the mountain to fetch water. After watching for a while, Xiaohua was speechless. There were many monks fetching water. It seemed that other than the old monk Yongzhong, even Miao Fa and Miao Qin, who were at the bright body realm, were obediently fetching water with buckets. They were all very well behaved. Moreover, Xiaohua could clearly see that either Miao Qin or Miao Fa had been hit by the old monk's staff. It was so painful that the corners of their mouths were crooked. Who are you? Xiaohua had been watching for a long time. The old monk naturally noticed. He coldly swept his gaze and scolded. Xiaohua frowned. He flew up from the guest room and landed in front of the old monk. He put his palms together and bowed. Amitba. Little monk Tipu greets Great Zen Master Ji Mie. Seeing that Xiaohua's age was similar to C.I. Hui's, his tone was similar to C.I. Hui's, and even the way he flew was the same, Great Zen Master Ji Mie felt a wave of irritation in his heart. He waved his hand as if he was shooing a fly and said, "No need to be polite. My Jinshan temple will not be receiving monks for the next few days. Little monk, quickly leave!" As he spoke, he waved the staff in his hand and hit Mingxin's back. Mingxin's figure staggered, and the water in the wooden bucket spilled out. Great Zen Master Ji Mie scolded. "Damn it! You only know how to steal wine and eat meat. Where did your meat go? Why are you so weak?" This disciple. Mingxin's face was deathly pale. He mumbled a few words but didn't dare to say more. "Quickly scram. If you don't fetch 200 buckets today, you are not allowed to eat." Great Zen Master Ji Mie scolded. Mingxin was scared witless and left in a sorry state. Great Zen Master Ji Mie coldly looked at Xiaohua and said, "Little monk, why are you still not leaving? Could it be that you want this old monk to send you out? How can the Buddhist children of today be so insensible?" Seeing Great Zen Master Ji Mie's appearance, Xiaohua bitterly smiled in his heart. He finally understood why Great Snow Mountain's Master Qingqin insisted on bringing him here that day, and even why Jiatai Temple's Master Ming turned around when he saw Jinshan Temple in front of him. This Great Zen Master Ji Mie really didn't have the demeanor of a Great Zen Master. He was really a boring Great Zen Master. However, Xiaohua still suppressed his displeasure. He respectfully bowed and said, "This little monk Tipu encountered something related to nirvana while chanting Buddhist scriptures. My heart was very puzzled. I heard that Jinshan Temple has a great Zen master named Nirvana. I was secretly delighted and specially came to your esteemed temple to ask Great Zen Master about the cause and effect of Nirvana. Great Zen Master Jimye sneered. His eyebrows twitched a few times for no reason. He was not moved by Xiaohua's modesty at all and said, Just because you are named Nirvana, you can comprehend Nirvana? Your name is Tipu. Could it be that you are Bodhi? As the name implies, it is the doings of Confucian cultivators. Our Buddhist children are chanting Buddhist scriptures with the spirit in their hearts. How can someone like you, who is chanting Buddhist scriptures with your naked eyes, be worthy of talking about Nirvana? You should obediently go back and properly chant Buddhist scriptures. It won't be too late to come to my Jinshan temple after you understand one or two things. Xiaohua was angry. His expression changed and said, This little monk originally heard that Jinshan Temple's great Zen master Jimye's Buddhist teachings were profound and his Buddhist techniques were divine. That's why this little monk came from afar to ask for guidance. But I didn't expect that great Zen master was actually like this. This little monk is truly disappointed. Ha ha, little monk, what do you think a great Zen master should be like? Is it amiable? Or is it approachable? Is it open-minded like a valley? Or is it open-minded like the world? Great Zen Master Jimye laughed loudly. So what if this old monk punished these disciples? They are bitterly burdened by their own bodies. They are unable to cleanse their minds and wholeheartedly follow Buddha. They have always been worried about their lives. This old monk only wanted to let them know that everything in this world is a burden. This old monk's punishment is a burden. This old monk's reward is also a burden. Watering the ground is tiring. Carrying water is also tiring. Only by attaining fruit and engraving the name of Buddha in Lane Temple can they be free. The so-called Bodhi tree originally has no tree, the mirror also has no platform. Originally there was nothing, where did the dust come from? Xiaohua sneered. But cultivation is not necessarily restricted to form. Perhaps it is wine and meat in the mouth, but there is no Buddha in the heart. Or perhaps it is saying Amitabha Buddha while holding a blood blade in the hand. Great Zen Master, which one is following Buddha? This little monk really didn't expect that Great Zen Master would actually fall into such a low position. You can only have your body like a Bodhi tree, your heart like a mirror, constantly wiping it and not letting the dust come from it. Insolent little monk! Great Zen Master Jimye was somewhat embarrassed and angry. I don't know where you learned a few words of debate from, but you came to debate Buddhist teachings with this old monk. Just what are your intentions? If you want to become famous at such a young age, you have come to the wrong place. -12. Chapter 3491. Ha! Xiaohua raised his head and laughed loudly. He pointed his finger and said, If this little monk wants to become famous, why don't I go find Siai Hui? He has just attained the Buddha fruit of Manjushri Bodhisattva. Wouldn't he be more useful than you? Besides, Great Zen Master, humans are humans. You and I are only Buddha, not Bodhisattvas. It's nothing to be envious and jealous. If you don't even dare to express the jealousy in your heart, how can you throw away your own skin? How can you attain Buddha fruit? Don't you admit that you are so anxious because you heard the news of Siai Hui attaining Buddha fruit? Perhaps your heart has already been bedeviled, but you still feel that you... At this moment, Xiaohua decided to use a plan to provoke him. Although he didn't say that he knew that Great Zen Master Nirvana had experienced Nirvana before, these few short sentences were very heartbreaking. It was as if a small knife had dug out Great Zen Master Nirvana's heart. The monks of Jinshan Temple who were stunned at the sight now had even more fear on their faces. They all wanted to escape, but they were afraid of attracting Great Zen Master Nirvana's attention. They very pitifully stood there, not daring to move. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Great Zen Master Nirvana was furious. After so many years, who dared to say such words to him? Which monk who came to his door didn't respectfully ask for guidance from him? The most important thing was that Xiaohua's words really touched his heart, completely tearing his face apart. Roar! Great Zen Master Nirvana roared. It was the Buddhist lion roar. Although this roar wasn't directed at the monks, nor was it directed at Xiaohua, a fierce wind blew above Jinshan Temple. The monks tried their best to cover their ears and squatted on the ground. Some of them who didn't have cultivation even painfully rolled on the ground. Hee, did this little monk hit the nail on the head? Xiaohua chuckled. His voice was even louder. Seeing Xi Hui attaining Buddha fruit, and thinking about how high my seniority is and how I also have attainments in cultivation, back then Xi Hui was still very respectful in front of me. Perhaps he even praised him a few times that day. But I didn't expect him to reach the peak all of a sudden. Looking at myself, I'm as helpless as a flower in the mirror and the moon in the water. Damn it! Great Zen Master Nirvana clapped his hands, and the Buddhist light above his head shone brightly. A dazzling golden Buddhist palm appeared and slammed towards Xiaohua. You're angry out of humiliation? Don't tell me. Great Zen Master Nirvana, you want to silence me by killing me? Xiaohua sneered. He didn't dare to use the hand of a nascent soul, but golden light flashed all over his body as he used his transcendence golden body. The golden light was similar to the Buddha's light. He raised his hand, and a fist that wasn't inferior to the Buddha's palm hit the Buddha's palm. Boom! With a loud sound, the entire Jinshan temple shook. Xiaohua's golden body was actually hit by the Nirvana Buddha palm, and he almost stepped on the main hall of the Jinshan temple. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. Auspicious clouds appeared under his feet and he hurriedly flew towards Qingjiang below Jinshan temple. Little monk, don't even think about leaving! At this moment, Great Zen Master Nirvana was truly burning with anger. His face was purple like an eggplant. Auspicious clouds also appeared under his feet as he chased after Xiaohua. He even threw the Zen staff in his hand into the air and it actually transformed into the appearance of a heavenly dragon. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards Xiaohua. Who's afraid of you? Xiaohua sneered. However, he was also somewhat anxious in his heart. After all, from the Great Zen Master Nirvana's palm just now, no matter what, he was still at the early stage of the canopy transformation realm. With Xiaohua's Buddhist cultivation, he definitely wasn't his opponent. Of course, Xiaohua also believed that this was merely the result of Great Zen Master Nirvana's humiliation turning into anger. He only needed to endure for a moment, and when Great Zen Master Nirvana's anger subsided, he would also stop. Xiaohua's life would definitely not be in any danger. Immediately, Xiaohua similarly waved his hand. The 9 dragons' monk staff flew out from the space, roaring as it transformed into 9 small dragons and fought with the heavenly dragon. Just like that, the 10 heavenly dragons above Qingjiang turned the clouds and rained with one turn of the hand, tossing the entire Qingjiang until the river water surged violently. The waves reached the sky, and it was truly a scene of devastation. Little monk, as expected, you came prepared. Great Zen Master Nirvana sneered. Today, this old monk will fulfill your wish and let you become famous in one battle. As he spoke, Great Zen Master Nirvana chanted incantations. His hands formed a Buddhist seal, and the Buddhist light around his body flourished. Along with Great Zen Master Nirvana's Buddhist seal, a thin Buddhist light appeared like heavenly flowers in the space several dozen feet to the left of Xiaohua. 2 or 3 heavenly women with benevolent faces and charming brows appeared. Their hands and legs danced, and along with this indescribable heavenly dance, a sound that was even louder than the sound of Sanskrit appeared. When that sound was heard, it was as if ants were crawling on one's heart, and a kind of indescribable heat was born from the lower abdomen. Just as Xiaohua was frowning, he suddenly became alert again. He stretched out his right arm and grabbed towards the bottom behind him. Pun! A pitch-black trident was caught in Xiaohua's hand. Xiaohua coldly snorted and turned around to look. It was a pitch-black, ugly yiksha that was several feet in size. It had poked out from the void to sneak attack him. Seeing that its trident was caught by Xiaohua, the yiksha was not anxious at all. With a shake of its hand, not only did it transform into a Buddhist light and disappear into the void, but even the trident also instantly transformed into several heavenly flowers, slowly drifting in the air. Not only that, just as the heavenly flowers drifted down a few feet, no less than 10 yakshas appeared around Xiaohua at the same time. Each of them bared their teeth and fiercely waved the tridents in their hands towards Xiaohua's transcendent's golden body. Hit! Xiaohua did not hesitate. The Buddhist light around his body flashed, and his hands formed a Buddhist seal. The power of the mountains was immediately born. Around Xiaohua, fist-sized stones appeared. These stones also flashed with Buddhist light and burst out in all directions. When the stones streaked across the sky and flew in front of the Yaksha and the heavenly maiden, these stones had already transformed into several feet in size. Pung pung pung. A series of muffled sounds rang out. The Yaksha's tridents were shattered, and each of them turned into Buddhist light. The charming heavenly maiden was ruthlessly shattered by the huge stones, and immediately turned into countless heavenly flowers that drifted over the Chin River. Little monk, you really have some foundation. You actually know the mountainous Buddhist seal. Great Zen Master Nirvana coldly watched, and then glanced at the 9-dragon tin staff that was fighting with the Buddhist staff. He snorted. No wonder you dare to come to my golden mountain temple to cause trouble. Seeing that Great Zen Master Nirvana's temperament was so extreme, Xiaohua was also helpless. At this moment, it was not convenient for him to ask for advice. Xiaohua only hoped that he could reach a deal without fighting with Great Zen Master Nirvana, and then he would gradually ask about Nirvana's secret. What? Great Zen Master, is there a problem with this little monk knowing the power of the mountains? Xiaohua also sneered. This is the first time this little monk has used this demon-subduing method on my Buddhist sex arhat. Unlike some senior monks who only attack their own disciples. Ha ha ha, this old monk would believe such funny words? Great Zen Master Nirvana laughed loudly. Since you have the heart, then this old monk will not be polite. You have to be careful, this old monk's power of karma. Sometimes this old monk can't control it. The power of karma? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, and did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly formed hand seals again. He had already comprehended the power of the mountains quite well, and now he had already entered the second layer. However, he had not truly comprehended the power of karma. Hearing that Great Zen Master Nirvana actually knew the power of karma, and what he used just now, Xiaohua's heart immediately became vigilant. He did not know what the second layer of karma was. Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha. Suddenly, Great Zen Master Nirvana's body chanted Buddhist names one after another. Then, Great Zen Master Nirvana's body also uncontrollably swelled up. Moreover, as his body swelled up, another head grew out from Great Zen Master Nirvana's back, and under this head, 2 more hand seals grew out. Ah! Xiaohua was greatly stunned. Looking at Great Zen Master Nirvana's strange 2-headed and 4-armed body, an indescribable feeling of absurdity arose in his heart. That's right, in Xiaohua's impression, this should be the demon statue of the blood-dripping paradise. How could the Buddhist sect's demon-subduing methods be like this? However, before Xiaohua could come to his senses, he saw the surrounding temperature plummet. Previously, within the heavenly flowers, red spikes suddenly grew out. These spikes grew increasingly and swallowed the entire heavenly flowers. Those spikes rapidly spread, instantly covering the entire sky. Moreover, as they spread, the spikes slowly turned into the shape of a lotus. In particular, the red color of the entire sky looked similar to a huge lotus. At the same time, an incomparable palpitating feeling arose in Xiaohua's heart. Red! Red lotus karmic fire? Xiaohua was greatly shocked. Naturally, Xiaohua had used this fire of karmic fire before. However, later on, because there were many other divine abilities, Xiaohua no longer used the dream-punishing dagger as well as the soul-punishing light. However, he didn't expect to see it again in the Golden Mountain Temple of the Western Paradise. Moreover, the Great Zen Master Nirvana's red lotus karmic fire was clearly much stronger than his by a little bit. Facing such a powerful opponent, Xiaohua's divine ability of the Buddhist sect was probably no match for it. However, Xiaohua wasn't willing to be outdone. His hands once again formed a seal. Layers of mountains flashed out from the Buddhist light. Like roaring earth dragons, they pounced towards the red lotus that hadn't yet formed. Unfortunately, although these mountains looked thick and the Buddhist light was also brilliant, upon contact with the red lotus karmic fire, they instantly turned into drops of golden liquid. This restriction flowed into the karmic fire and disappeared without a trace. It didn't cause any ripples at all. Xiaohua was helpless. He lowered his head and glanced at the lotus platform that didn't immediately close. He knew that this was the way out that the great Zen Master Nirvana left for him. Almost without thinking, he pulled himself out of the gap in the red lotus karmic fire. However, who would have thought that just as he escaped from the karmic fire, before he could withdraw his Dharma body, an enormous force pressed down on him. It was actually the force of mountains that Xiaohua was familiar with. Xiaohua was rather caught off guard. Moreover, he was originally flying downwards. With a loud plop, the golden body sank into the Qin River. At the same time, roar! The 9-dragon staff also wailed and fell from the sky. It sank to the bottom of the river with Xiaohua. -12. Chapter 3492. Ha ha! Great Zen Master Nirvana raised his head and laughed heartily. He shook his body and the golden Buddha statue slowly entered his body. The red lotus karmic fire above Qin River also disappeared into the void. He then looked at Qin River and said in a clear voice, "Little monk, don't tell me you're not trying to provoke me. Unfortunately, this old monk has seen this kind of trick many times. I won't let you do it again. This old monk has already given you a lot of face in today's battle. Since you're already famous, you can go now. Don't bother this old monk again. If you do, don't blame this old monk for being impolite." Then, great Zen Master Nirvana no longer looked at Qin River. He turned around and flew into Jishan Temple. Damn it! Xiaohua put away the 9-dragon staff and Transcendent's golden body. He used the water escape technique and flew out from the upper reaches of the Qin River. He landed on a mountain rock and cursed in his heart. He was at his wits' end again. His plan was clearly seen through by great Zen Master Nirvana. Moreover, he had offended him a lot with his words. Not to mention the difference in age, it was impossible for them to become friends without fighting. Even if he wanted to see him again, he wouldn't be willing. How could he ask him for help? There are really all kinds of people in this day and age. Xiaohua scratched his bald head. At this time, hair was gradually growing on top of his head. It was quite itchy. How can such an uncultured monk achieve fruition? If he can achieve fruition, then the Buddhist sect is really blind. Amitabha Buddha, this little monk didn't mean to say that. Kacha! All of a sudden, heavenly thunder exploded above the Qin River. The sky, which was already somewhat gloomy, was now even darker. Bolts of heavenly thunder came without warning, and thunderbolts began to strike nearby. It's raining, put away the clothes, Xiaohua said weakly. The rain gradually became heavier, and the sky became darker. Xiaohua stood up and slowly walked in the rain. He went against Qin River. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. For example, should he change his appearance and meet great Zen Master Nirvana again? Should he wait for a period of time and wait for great Zen Master Nirvana to be in a good mood? However, all these thoughts turned into ashes when they met great Zen Master Nirvana's strange temper. Hey, isn't this the wine-meat monk called Mingxin? While walking, Xiaohua saw a small cave in the distance. Unexpectedly, there was a trace of fiery light in the midst of the boundless rain. Xiaohua swept out with his Buddha sense and immediately saw it. However, when he saw everything inside, he really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mingxin carefully used his body to block the entrance of the cave. He was roasting a rabbit over a fire. This monk, Xiaohua slightly shakes his head. He really doesn't learn from his mistakes. He was just warned by his own abbot, and now he's hiding out to eat meat. He's really a weirdo. Mingxin! Xiaohua roared. Mingxin was so frightened that he threw the rabbit in his hand into the fire. Before he could even turn his head, he hastily knelt on the ground and cried out, "Martial ancestor, spare my life! Martial ancestor, spare my life!" Hee hee. Xiaohua sneered. You were just beaten by the great Zen master and now you dare to eat meat, you really don't want to live anymore. Hearing that it wasn't his own abbot's voice, Mingxin gathered his courage and secretly took a look. Seeing that it was actually Xiaohua, his body trembled even more. He cried out, Martial ancestor, so it was you, please spare this disciple. This disciple was just greedy for good food, there was really no other way. Get up, Xiaohua said with a smile. This poor monk doesn't get along with your abbot, how could I possibly tell him about this matter? That's right, that's right. Martial ancestor's righteous words today really make this disciple admire you. Mingxin got up and hastily picked up the rabbit that fell into the ashes. He hurriedly blew the dust with his mouth and flattered. Martial ancestor doesn't know. In the entire Jinshan temple, there are a total of 62 disciples. Who would dare to talk back to the abbot like martial ancestor? Moreover, martial ancestor's magical power is great. You can actually fight with the abbot for so long. To tell martial ancestor the truth, this disciple has never seen anyone provoke the abbot to use the red lotus karmic fire. It's not that this disciple is flattering martial ancestor, but all the monks who come to my Jinshan temple, which one of them isn't respectful and reverent? How could there be a monk like martial ancestor? To tell the truth, the senior brothers and martial uncles in the temple are all cheering for martial ancestor in their hearts. This disciple can't wait for martial ancestor to be my Jinshan temple's abbot. Xiaohua found a place to sit down casually and sighed. It was a satisfying fight. You all also felt refreshed, but this poor monk's matter can be considered as a failure. Damn it, why is your abbot like this? When his mood is bad, he doesn't even listen to a single word from others. Moreover, he frequently uses his magical power to suppress others. Isn't that so? Mingxin also deeply felt the same. He turned the roasted yellow rabbit left and right and sighed. This disciple just likes some wine and meat, it didn't delay anyone. This disciple originally didn't intend to become a monk, but was really forced to do so by others. In order to survive, this disciple had no choice but to become a monk. This disciple knows that this disciple has some misdeeds and has always been avoiding people. Oh, right, martial ancestor, why are you looking for my abbot? Forget it, it's useless to tell you. Xiaohua already understood that in the entire Jinshan temple, except for the old monk Yongzhong, no one else would know about the matter of great Zen master Jimia. It would be useless for him to tell Mingxin. Mingxin was just chatting up Xiaohua. He simply didn't intend to listen to Xiaohua's reply. When Xiaohua answered, he had already turned his attention to the rabbit in his hand. His hands and feet nimbly took out a small bag from his bosom. This small bag had many small compartments. Mingxin didn't even raise his head as he very familiarly took out seasonings one after another and sprinkled them on the rabbit meat. In a moment, a rich meat aroma filled the cave. Xiaohua smiled and said, Little monk, you really know how to enjoy life. Hee hee, a mouthful of wine and a mouthful of meat, even if this disciple had to reach fruition, this disciple wouldn't be willing. As Mingxin spoke, he used his hand to tear the rabbit into two halves and eagerly handed the slightly larger piece to Xiaohua. How could Xiaohua eat it? He waved his hand and said, Do you think this poor monk's face looks like it would eat meat? Hee hee. Mingxin smiled apologetically and said, Martial ancestor, you don't know, this disciple roasts good meat, even if it's martial ancestor wonderful technique, hee hee. As he spoke, he pushed the rabbit meat forward and said with a smile, Martial ancestor, you might as well try it. Go away! Xiaohua scolded. If you do this again, don't blame this poor monk for throwing you back to Jinshan temple. Seeing Xiaohua angry, Mingxin hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, Martial ancestor, don't blame me, don't blame me. As he spoke, he took 2 steps back and bit off a large piece of rabbit meat. He vigorously chewed it, looking like he was enjoying it very much. However, after eating for a while, Mingxin looked at the pouring rain outside the cave and said gloomily, Ai, today is really unlucky. I haven't even woken up when the abbot pulled me up. Not only did I tire myself out for half a day, I also got beaten up. Granny, especially today when the water level of the Chen River is rising. Without a ferry, even if I wanted to get a mouthful of wine to drink, it wouldn't be possible. Martial ancestor, tell me, how can I eat meat without wine? Isn't this a big killjoy? Xiaohua's eyes turned, and with a wave of his hand, he took out a jade pot and handed it to Mingxin. What is this? Mingxin was slightly stunned and looked at Xiaohua with some confusion. Xiaohua said with a smile, Didn't you want to drink? This poor monk just happens to have some here. I'll give it to you. Ah? Martial ancestor, is this wine? Mingxin was absolutely overjoyed. He practically snatched the jade pot over, put his nose in front of the jade pot, and sniffed it a few times. An intoxicated expression immediately brewed on his face, and he said in an extremely exaggerated manner, Grandmaster, what kind of good wine is this? How come this disciple has never drunk it before? This is a spiritual wine given to this poor monk by a good friend from the Tao sect. I naturally can't drink it, so it's a bargain for you, Xiaohua said with a smile. Spiritual wine! Mingxin used his mouth to smack the jade pot, and both his eyes narrowed. He had never drunk such a wonderful spiritual wine before, and he really couldn't bear to drink too much. After taking a few small sips, Mingxin took a few bites of the rabbit meat. Suddenly, he spat out the rabbit meat onto the ground and said in a vexed manner, After drinking the spirit wine, why is this rabbit meat so disgusting? With such a spiritual wine, if there isn't dragon liver and phoenix marrow, how can it be worthy? Ha ha ha, little monk, don't be greedy, Xiaohua said with a big laugh. Mingxin's face was crying, and he very carefully hid the jade pot in his bosom, saying, Martial ancestor, you've harmed me. With this spiritual wine, how can this disciple drink mortal wine in the future? Don't talk about wine, even ordinary meat will be tasteless for this disciple to eat. What? This poor monk gave you the spiritual wine out of goodwill, but it's a problem? The corner of Xiaohua's eyes twitched, and he said coldly. Mingxin was shocked, and he hurriedly smiled. No, this disciple just feels that after drinking this wine, this disciple will have no regrets in this life. That's more like it. Xiaohua slightly nodded. Oh right, martial ancestor, why are you looking for my abbot? There's no harm in saying, this disciple used your fine wine, so no matter what, I have to put in some effort for you, right? Otherwise, this disciple will feel uneasy in his heart. Mingxin was very tactful, and he asked again. Xiaohua said with a smile, You don't need to care about the specifics. Just tell this poor monk about your abbot's usual habits and actions, and let this poor monk listen. Yes, this disciple understands. Hearing that Xiaohua didn't need his help and only wanted to inquire about Great Zen Master Nirvana's movements, Mingxin was very happy, and he told everything he knew to Xiaohua in full detail, no matter how big or small. Xiaohua listened while nodding, and his brows furrowed even tighter. It was exactly the same as Xiaohua's guess. Great Zen Master Nirvana's temper wasn't an ordinary kind of eccentric, and his seniority was also frighteningly high. Ordinary Buddhist disciples didn't dare to challenge him. Towards Jinshan Temple's monks, Great Zen Master Nirvana treated them like his own children. If he wanted to beat them, he would beat them, and if he wanted to scold them, he would scold them. Even the junior disciples who came to ask for advice were also like this. If they didn't succeed, he would turn hostile and chase them away. But whenever someone came to ask for help, Great Zen Master Nirvana never made a move to help. No matter what methods the person used, he would ignore them all. Using Mingxin's words, Great Zen Master Nirvana was the synonym for stinginess, cruelty, and jealousy. -12. Chapter 3493. Could it be, your family's abbot doesn't have any hobbies? Xiaohua can't help but interrupt Mingxin's incessant rambling. Rather than listening to him talk about Great Zen Master Nirvana's hobbies, it's better to say that he's complaining, talking about his own bloody history. Flattery! Mingxin answers without hesitation. However, even if you flatter him, he still won't agree to help you. Normal hobbies. For example, Buddhist tools or Buddhist techniques? No! Mingxin shakes his head, but then he explains. Of course, disciple doesn't cultivate Buddhist techniques, so I don't know if abbot likes these. However, speaking of liking. Speaking to here, Mingxin hesitates. What's wrong? Xiaohua suddenly becomes spirited and asks. Mingxin thinks for a moment and says in a low voice. My family's abbot has a strange hobby. Disciple only discovered it in recent years. What strange hobby? On the 30th day of the 12th lunar month 2 years ago, disciple went out to look for wine, but unexpectedly got drunk and didn't return to Jinshan Temple in time. At night, the water level of the Chen River rose greatly. Disciple risked death to steal a small broken boat to cross the river. But when the boat reached the center of the river, I suddenly saw the abbot sitting on a tall rock by the river. At that time, disciple was scared out of his wits, kneeling on the small boat and kowtowing to admit his guilt. However, disciple kowtowed who knows how many times and saw that the small boat drifted far away, but the abbot still didn't open his eyes or open his mouth. Afterwards, disciple entered the temple in fear, but the abbot didn't seem to know about this matter and didn't mention it at all, nor did he punish disciple. Mingxin says carefully. So on the 30th day of the 12th lunar month last year, disciple couldn't sleep at night, so I sneaked out and secretly took a look. Guess what? What? Xiaohua's curiosity is piqued. Mingxin says with a mysterious face. There is no moon on the 30th day of the 12th lunar month. Disciple didn't know when the abbot sat on that tall rock again, as if he was asleep. Only when the morning sun shines on the abbot's body did the abbot disappear again. As if he never appeared. Don't you think it's strange? This can't be considered strange, right? Xiaohua doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. How can it not be strange? If he doesn't have something in his heart, if he's not thinking about something, who would stay awake the whole night and stare at the river in a daze? Even to the point that disciple next to him? Mingxin obviously wanted to say, which nun are you thinking about? But looking at Xiaohua's bald head, he didn't dare to say it. 30th of the 12th lunar month? Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and smiled. Today should be the 27th of the 12th lunar month, right? There are only a few days. Are you still planning to PSSS, Masters' SSSSS, S's he's S? Teet S. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and understood. Back then, Great Zen Master Nirvana most likely entered silence around the 30th day of the 12th lunar month, and the place where he entered silence was the tall rock beside the Chen River. However, for some unknown reason, he quickly escaped from silence. Afterwards, no matter what method Great Zen Master Nirvana used, he was unable to enter silence again. Therefore, he was brooding over this, and every year, he would spend a night there to comprehend the feeling of entering silence, right? T. Xiaohua sighs in his heart and says, Little monk, it's best not to know too much about other people's secrets. Master may not notice if you peek once or twice, but if you're discovered by him 3 or 4 times, then even if you want to eat meat and drink wine, it'll be impossible. Think about it, if I can find you hiding here, how can Master not know if you're peeking from the side? Mingxin's forehead immediately breaks out in cold sweat. He hurriedly nods and says, Disciple understands, disciple won't dare any more. Xiaohua waves his hand and says, Go, it's not early anymore. Although it's still raining, you need to return to the temple. Master's mood isn't good today, don't provoke him. Yes, disciple will return now. Mingxin looks at the gloomy sky outside the cave and estimates the time. He clasps his hands together and salutes before hurriedly leaving. After Mingxin left, Xiaohua looks at the messy cave and the scattered bones on the ground. He doesn't want to stay any longer. He walks out of the cave and slowly walks along the river in the rain. His mind is in a mess, but he can't sort it out. Master Nirvana was so remorseful when he left the Nirvana realm. It's clear that the Nirvana realm is extremely precious to the Buddha. Jian Luer has already been in silence for 100 years and still hasn't woken up. It's likely that the opportunity hasn't arrived. Even if I find someone to wake her up, it may not be the right choice. After walking for a while, Xiaohua feels that he's really mentally tired. He casually finds a place, sits down cross-legged, closes his eyes, and calms his heart in this torrential rain. Several days have passed since he started meditating. When Xiaohua opens his eyes again, the sky is even darker, the rain is even heavier, and the water in the river has also risen by a lot. Xiaohua raises his head and sighs. The will of heaven is hard to fathom. The wind and clouds change. Who knows what tomorrow will be? When Xiaohua's gaze inadvertently sees a trace of white in the east, he suddenly remembers that today is the 30th of the 12th lunar month. If it's as Mingxin said, then Master Nirvana should be sitting on the tall rock beside the river again. There's no harm in going and taking a look. Let's see if he has any sorrow in his heart. Although he advised Mingxin not to go, Xiaohua's curiosity was piqued. He steps and flies down the river while thinking to himself, if I can grab hold of this so-called great Zen master's little tail, let's see if he still dares to not listen to me. After several days of heavy rain, the water in the Qin River has become very turbulent. The inside of the river is very muddy. Some upstream sand, some branches, withered grass, and occasionally some thick logs and drowned livestock. Xiaohua guesses that the upstream of the Qin River was affected by the disaster, and the livestock were washed into the river. Xiaohua carefully flies down the river and stealthily releases his soul's sense. Sure enough, under the Golden Mountain Temple, a tall rock suddenly pops out. Master Nirvana is sitting on the rock. At this moment, Master Nirvana is really like Nirvana. There's no sound and there's no Buddhist light around his body. The torrential rain is more concentrated than water pouring down on his body. His monk's robe is already wet. His shiny bald head is covered in water. Even in the darkness before dawn, it can be seen clearly. Xiaohua doesn't dare to get too close. Xiaohua's soul sense swept past Master Nirvana and then looked at other places. He didn't see anything strange. Not to mention the nun, there's not even a shadow of a person. Xiaohua is a little disappointed. He knows that he's gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Just as he's about to retreat, his soul sense swept across the lower reaches of the Qin River. There's a floating corpse in the river. Xiaohua is startled. He hastily returns his soul sense. After taking a look, he sighed again. This floating corpse had already lost its vitality. Life is short. Xiaohua turns around. With his soul sense, he can't clearly see whether the floating corpse is male or female. This Master Nirvana is really Nirvana. He only thinks about how to be Nirvana and how to achieve fruition. Even if there's a floating corpse in front of him, he doesn't know how to fish it up. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's body suddenly quivers. A light flashes in his mind. Yes. That's right. Xiaohua's face was filled with wild joy. Immediately after, he looked at Great Zen Master Nirvana and then looked at the sky in the east. He didn't dare to be negligent. He pressed down on the cloud and waved his hand. From the yin-yang pond in the space, he took out a huge 7-colored lotus that he didn't know where he got it from. The moment the lotus entered the rain, it immediately emitted a 7-colored brilliance that blocked the rain outside the lotus. Namo Mithrayas Buddha. Xiaohua chants. Disciple sincerely prays that this disciple can save Jiang Luer's life. Saying this, Xiaohua shakes his hand again. Jiang Luer, whose eyes are tightly closed, is also taken out by him and sent into the 7-colored lotus. After some estimation, Xiaohua pushes his hand, and the 7-colored lotus, along with Jiang Luer, falls into the Qin River. Strange. At first, Xiaohua was still somewhat worried that the 7-colored lotus would sink into the water, or that Jiang Luer would fall into the river. At that time, the space did not have yin and yang, so one's age can't be counted. After the 5 elements stabilized, another 100 years have passed. Jiang Luer is still in nirvana. 100 years have not left any traces on his body. At this time, he still has the appearance of a child. The 7-colored lotus is more than enough to contain him. It's steady like a small boat. Seeing the 7-colored lotus drifting several feet away, Xiaohua is about to use the Devil Realm's concealment technique. Suddenly his heart jumps. Not good, the 7-colored lotus is too dazzling. With the old monk's temperament, how can he tolerate such a Buddhist treasure? Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly flew to the riverside, wanting to exchange it for something else. However, the place's sole consciousness was paying attention to, on the tall rock, Great Zen Master Nirvana seems to have made a slight movement. The horizon also revealed a trace of brilliance. Xiaohua is very anxious. He knows that this opportunity is fleeting. With a wave of his hand, the 7-colored lotus entered the space. Jiang Luer's figure is in a hurry. Xiaohua saw a broken wooden basin at the side. Without thinking, he sent it over and hurriedly hid himself in the void. Xiaohua's figure had just disappeared when Great Zen Master Nirvana's eyes opened. Coincidentally, the east is daybreak. Thousands of brilliance flew past. Amitabha. Great Zen Master Nirvana chanted the name of Buddha. His voice is filled with loneliness, regret, and helplessness. Following Great Zen Master Nirvana's Buddha chants, the torrential rain actually lessened. The clouds above Jinshan Temple thinned visibly. Great Zen Master Nirvana is facing Xinjiang. When he opened his eyes, he saw Jiang Luer sitting in the broken wooden basin with his hands together in nirvana. Great Zen Master Nirvana stares blankly, dumbstruck. -12. Chapter 3494. This child is... Great Zen Master Jimia finally woke up from his stupor. He had been concerned about the matter of entering silence for many years and had thought about it countless times in his mind. Now that he saw Jiang Luer entering silence, he immediately saw through it. How could he not be stunned? Has she entered silence? Although Great Zen Master Nirvana's voice was questioning, he was certain. In the entire Pure Land, there were probably not many people who understood the phenomenon of entering silence better than him. Just as Great Zen Master Nirvana's gaze landed on Jiang Luer, the rain that had been pouring down for many days suddenly stopped on Sunday. The rain stopped, and the clouds parted. Half of the morning sun's face peeked out from the horizon. Right above Jinshan Temple, a rainbow was born and hung horizontally between Jinshan Temple and the western heavenly realm. At the end of the rainbow was Jiang Luer, who was sitting on the wooden basin. Under the rainbow, Jiang Luer's body was overflowing with 7 colors. Under the 7 colors, there was a dense Buddhist light that suddenly rushed into the rainbow. An indescribable solemnity appeared on his face. Although the figure was sitting on the broken wooden basin with rainwater flowing out from the gaps in the wooden basin, in Great Zen Master Nirvana's eyes, it was like a 9th-grade golden lotus. Amitabha. Disciple Nirvana thanks Buddha for your kindness. Suddenly, Nirvana seemed to have understood something. Tears flowed out of his eyes. Ignoring his soaked kasaya, he knelt on the huge rock and respectfully kowtowed 9 times to the western heavenly realm. Not only was Nirvana stunned, even Xiaohua, who was hiding at the side, felt that it was inconceivable. All of this was done by him behind the scenes. But all the signs pointed to the fact that the rainbow could be born so casually. What was with the Buddhist light on Jiang Luer's body? How could all these be so coincidental? After Nirvana kowtowed 9 times, the rainbow that pierced through the heavens and the earth disappeared. Jiang Luer's broken wooden basin floated to the bottom of the huge rock. Great Zen Master Nirvana no longer hesitated. A Buddhist cloud appeared under his feet and landed on Xinjiang. With a rare smile on his face, he reached out and hugged Jiang Luer in his arms. He lowered his head and looked at the broken wooden basin. After thinking for a moment, he also took the wooden basin in his hands and turned into a Buddhist light and rushed into Jinshan Temple. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, Xiaohua's figure appeared on the other side of Qin. Jiang Luer's face was still full of confusion and even had a trace of worry. In Xiaohua's imagination, when Jiang Luer was awakened, he should be by her side, and Jiang Luer should not be talking or communicating with anyone in the Pure Land world. But now, he had a sudden idea and really treated Jiang Luer as Jiang Luer, and sent her down the river to Great Zen Master Jimia. Everything was out of his control. Not to mention Jiang Luer's Xiaoyu mainland accent, not to mention Jiang Luer's gradual familiarity with the unfamiliar environment, Even if Great Zen Master Jimya asked about Jiang Luo's background, Xiaohua did not dare to imagine how Jiang Luo would answer. Yellow Flower Ridge? 100 Herbs? Morning Rain Continent? How would Jiang Luo explain to Nirvana Master Nirvana? Forget it, forget it. Xiaohua scratched his short hair in distress and comforted himself. Since Luo appeared in Jinshan Temple and caused such a strange phenomenon, I'm afraid Luo really has some background. Isn't this what Buddhism emphasizes? Even if Luo said something, with Nirvana's experience, would he understand? When Luo is older, I'll come back and explain to him. Xiaohua looked at the Jinshan Temple for a moment, and heard the Buddhist bell ringing in the temple. His figure floated up and began to fly in the direction of the great snowy mountain. His purpose of coming to the Western Paradise had finally been achieved. Xiaohua's heart could be said to have relaxed. However, after flying for 100 miles, Xiaohua suddenly stopped. He frowned and thought to himself, "It's not right to leave Luo alone in Jinshan Temple. This Jinshan Temple is very strange. Nirvana Master is stingy, and narrow-minded. Yongzhong is an old monk with 1 foot in the grave. Miao Chun and Miao Fa are very reckless. Mingxin is a monk who loves wine and meat. Damn it, there's no normal monk in this Jinshan Temple. Besides, the Pure Land is not the real Pure Land. It seems that I have to find someone who can protect Luo. Otherwise, how can I be at ease? Who? Where can I find someone to entrust Luo to?" Xiaohua stood in the air and was distressed again. After all, Jiang Luo was not an ordinary person. He was Xiao Xianrui's beloved son. Xiaohua did not dare to neglect him in the slightest. Any negligence would make Xiaohua unable to face Xiao Xianrui and Zhang Qishao. Little Yellow? Little Black? Or Herculean Centipede? Xiaohua's mind turned rapidly, secretly looking for a candidate. After thinking for a moment, he decided that these 3 little things should be all right. Just as Xiaohua was about to enter the space to discuss with the 3 little things, Gio. A burst of beast cries came from the mountain ridge below Xiaohua's feet. When Xiaohua looked down, he saw a group of monkeys playing happily in the mountain forest. Seeing the monkeys, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. Yes, there were 2 fire apes in Xiaohua's space. Although these 2 fire apes were not directly placed in the space, but in the storage bag, even if they were placed in the storage bag, after all, they had been separated by yin and yang. Who knows what changes would happen to them? Such 2 spiritual creatures, if he did not use them now, when would he? This was a helper sent by the heavens. Although he was happy, Xiaohua was somewhat hesitant. After all, the 2 fire apes were not like Little Yellow and Little Yellow. The 2 were his children, while the fire apes were outsiders. Especially the fire ape from before, it had a bad temper and was unruly. If he let it protect Jiang Luo, it would eat Jiang Luo. However, if he let the fire ape protect Jiang Luo, Xiaohua was even more worried. Although that fire ape looked well behaved, its origin was very unclear. It suddenly appeared in the fog mountain and was taken in by him as soon as they met. Who knew what it was doing? What was special was that Xiaohua had an inexplicable vigilance towards this fire ape, an instinctive disbelief. Compared to the fire ape, Xiaohua believed that the one with a bad temper was more. That kind of unruly nature made people feel unyielding and rebellious. If he could give this fire ape some benefits, it might be able to make it feel grateful. However, the problem was that he had beaten up the fire ape more than once or twice. The fire ape hated him to the bone. If he were to give it a favor at this time, wouldn't it be too disrespectful to the fire ape? Wasn't it too straightforward? It was too obvious. What should I do? Xiaohua was once again at a loss. After thinking for half a day, an idea that could not be considered perfect appeared in his mind. At this time, Xiaohua did not have any particularly good ideas. He could only gamble. Of course, this gamble would not cost him anything. If there was a price to pay, the stingy Xiaohua would not do it. Then, Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense until it was 1,000 miles away. He looked at the situation within this 1,000 miles and then entered the space. When Jade Archive Xiaohua arrived at a place in the space, he raised both of his hands and moved his mind. The scene within a few miles began to quickly change, just like the outside. When the illusion within a few miles was completed, Jade Archive Xiaohua's figure rose again. As his figure slowly rose, the illusion extended into the distance. Okay. Seeing that the illusory realm had already enveloped the entire range of 1,000 miles, Jade Archive Xiaohua stopped and said with a satisfied smile. Although this poor Taoist can't really move mountains and seas, it shouldn't be a problem to create an illusory formation to fool the fire ape, right? After saying that, Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand again. With a loud rumbling sound, a tall mountain rose from the ground and soared into the sky. Only then did it stop. Looking at the bare mountain, Xiaohua pondered for a moment, and then waved his hand. A little bit of green appeared on the mountain. The green quickly grew and turned into a towering pine tree. Under the pine tree, there were immortal herbs. Some turned into tall and straight bamboos that swayed with the wind. In the bamboo forest, there were some strange flowers competing with each other. It really looked like a fairyland. It seems like it's still missing something. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at the beautiful scenery of the strange mountain and felt happy. He pinched his chin and thought carefully. After a moment, Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and patted his forehead. Clear air spurted out from his head and landed on the strange mountain. He said, "How can there be no water when there is a mountain? How can there be no movement when there is still?" The clear air fell. Rumble! A waterfall flew down from the top of the mountain. The waterfall splashed in all directions and turned into large and small streams that coiled around the strange mountain. When the streams were formed, fish were born in the water. The sound of birds chirping in the foothills could be heard. Occasionally, there were the cries of beasts, shaking the wilderness. Okay, I should have an immortal cave. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and nodded. He pointed his finger again. At the top of the mountain, in a secret place, an immortal cave appeared. The immortal cave's passageway went deeper and deeper. Finally, inside the cave, there were layers upon layers of exquisite pavilions. It was connected to the Pearl Palace and the Pearl Palace. It was an endless room to live in seclusion. That's enough. It's only an illusion. I'll let the fire ape see it. Xiaohua seemed to be very satisfied with the Jade Archive. He was just about to take out the spirit storage pouch, but looking at the somewhat simple and unadorned cave entrance, Xiaohua's mind was moved. He pointed his hand, and with a loud bang, a stone tablet was born at the top of the cliff at the cave entrance. It was over 10 meters tall and over 8 feet long. What name should I write? Good fortune? Longevity with heaven and earth? Or Fortune Gate? Don't. I don't know if this fire ape's intelligence has been opened. It's better not to reveal too much. Jade Archive Xiaohua strangled these thoughts. Oh right, give it a name that is neither Buddha nor Tao. It doesn't need to know everything. Others won't be able to guess it. Ha ha ha, this is it. Jade Archive Xiaohua waved his sleeve and 10 golden words appeared on the stone tablet. Spiritual Fengsuan Mountain, Slanting Moon and 3 Stars Cave. -12. Chapter 3495. Along with the appearance of these words, Jade Archive Xiaohua blew a breath of air. On the left side of the stone tablet, clouds of mist appeared and colorful lights flickered. Cypress and pine trees grew one after another, and the ground was covered with countless strange flowers and plants. Finally, there were even red-crowned cranes and other spirit birds flying nearby. Roar! Several beast cries resounded. The white deer, black bear, and other spirit beasts rolled in front of the cave entrance, and scattered in all directions. After making such a scene, Jade Archive Xiaohua was finally relieved. He flew to the bottom of the strange mountain and stretched out his hand. The spiritual storage bag appeared in his hand. He opened the spiritual storage bag and shook the fire ape with the sun-moon corona on its head to the ground. Looking at the fire ape with its eyes tightly closed, Jade Archive Xiaohua pointed his finger, and the sun-moon corona disappeared into the fire ape's head. Then, Jade Archive Xiaohua flew into the air and looked at everything with a smile. The fire ape slowly opened its eyes. Before it could clearly see the situation around it, it immediately flew into a rage and roared at its surroundings. However, when the fire ape saw that its surroundings were quiet and only the sound of the wind and the chirping of birds could be heard, it was stunned. It looked to its left and right in disbelief. It really couldn't believe that Xiaohua, who had tortured it, wasn't by its side. In fact, when it touched its head again, the sun-moon corona on its head was also gone. Roar! The fire ape was happy. It opened its mouth and roared. Its hand also fiercely hit its chest and even rolled on the ground. After tossing and turning for half an hour, who knew how many flowers and plants were crushed, it finally stopped. When the fire ape calmed down a little, its eyes that couldn't hide its joy looked at the strange mountain that Xiaohua had just created. It actually spoke human language. Fuck! What a tall mountain! Who? After the fire ape finished speaking, it raised its head and looked at the sky. Its red eyes were full of vigilance. Who could it be? Naturally, it was Jade Archive Xiaohua who was hiding in the sky. The fire ape opened its mouth and said fuck, which shocked Xiaohua so much that he almost fell from the sky. He wasn't surprised that the fire ape could speak. After all, the separation of yin and yang wasn't a joke. Instead, he was surprised that the fire ape could spit out vulgarities when it opened its mouth. The fire ape naturally couldn't find the trace of Jade Archive Xiaohua in the space. It just stared in the air for a long time, then withdrew its ominous glint and walked away. Looking at the fire ape's leisurely appearance, it seemed that it also enjoyed its rare freedom. The fire ape was happy, but Jade Archive Xiaohua was not happy, because the fire ape was not heading towards the strange mountain, nor was it heading towards the Cave of 3 Stars. Seeing the fire ape walking further and further away, Jade Archive Xiaohua had no choice but to point his finger. Then, he heard a song coming from the strange mountain. Observing chess, Kulan, felling ding-ding, cloud edge, valley entrance. Selling wine, laughing wildly and indulging in love. The autumn sky is high, facing the moon, I sleep on the pine roots, and the dawn comes. Recognizing the old forest, climbing the cliffs, cutting the withered vines with an axe. Harvested into a caddy, in the Xingda market, 3 liters of rice were exchanged. Furthermore, there was no competition, so the current price was mediocre. You don't know how to scheme, you don't have honor or disgrace, and you live a peaceful life. Where we meet, you are not an immortal, yet you are Tao, sitting quietly and reciting the Yellow Court. Unfortunately, when the fire ape heard this, it roared and shouted, Noisy, noisy. I don't understand. As it spoke, flames appeared under its feet, and it was about to escape into the distance. Jade Archive Xiaohua was dumbfounded. Although the fire ape's words were somewhat jerky, Jade Archive Xiaohua understood that it was the language of the Xiaoyu continent, and not the language of the Elysium world that he had just spoken. Fuck. This is really troublesome. Jade Archive Xiaohua could not help but curse. Fortunately, just when Jade Archive Xiaohua wanted to use the same trick to attract the fire ape's attention, the fire ape actually stopped in midair. It looked at the strange mountain very doubtfully, and then looked to the side. This strange mountain was clearly different from the surroundings, especially when there were sounds of people inside. The fire ape was not stupid, so it naturally paid attention. Immediately, the fire ape raised its flames and rushed into the strange mountain, landing at the place where there was some movement before. Haha, I've fallen into the trap. Seeing this, Jade Archive Xiaohua laughed wildly in his heart, and proudly said, Damn, since you're in Ai's hands, how can you escape? Even if you're now at the beginning of spiritual wisdom, I'll still make you fall into Ai's trap. Sure enough, the fire ape looked everywhere for the singer, but to no avail. It moved towards the direction of the Cave of the Slanting Moon and 3 Stars. However, when the fire ape looked at the tall stone tablet, and the words on the stone tablet that it did not recognize, and then looked at the cave that was full of auspicious signs, it suddenly hesitated. A kind of reverence actually appeared in its red eyes, which was far from the fire ape's previous arrogance. Just when the fire ape was hesitating, The door of the cave slowly opened, and an immortal-like old man walked out of the cave. He looked at the fire ape with a smile and said, "Silly child, since you're here, why don't you enter?" The fire ape looked at the old man that Jade Archive Xiaohua transformed into and was stunned. The expression on its ugly face changed a few times. Although the old man's hair and beard were all white, he looked like a crane with white hair and a youthful complexion. However, if the fire ape carefully looked at the old man's appearance, there was a kind of strange feeling. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, there were countless faces, whether male or female, Taoist or Buddhist, or ragged clothes or brocade robes with jade belts. It was impossible to see the old man's true appearance. In particular, although he could not understand the old man's words, the old man's voice seemed to be directly transmitted into his heart. A kind of sadness, a kind of grievance, a kind of dependence, and a kind of intimacy spontaneously arose from his heart. Almost regardless of everything, the fire ape rushed to the front of Xiaohua and shouted, "Master! This disciple finally sees you." "Ah?" Jade Archive Xiaohua heard the fire ape call him master and was unconsciously stunned. He was almost caught off guard. It was true that he had set up a trap for the fire ape in the space, but he only thought of Jiangchao Temple's Xiao Jian and the scene of Xiao Jian selling divination on the streets of Longevity Town. Jade Archive Xiaohua was deliberately mystifying here, but he wanted to borrow the identity of an immortal to give the fire ape a few pointers so that it could protect Jiang Lure. Jade Archive Xiaohua had never thought of accepting the fire ape as a disciple. However, looking at the fire ape's slightly trembling body, Jade Archive Xiaohua was relieved. Whether it was a human or a demon, there was a dream in the heart. In the dream, there were relatives and enemies. This fire ape had been bullied by him in the Xiaoyu continent. In its heart, it probably had long dreamed of growing into a strong person. Now that it saw him so amiable, was it not the same kind of intimacy in its heart? And the result of this intimacy was that it wanted to worship him as a master and learn magical powers so that it could take revenge and vent its anger? Of course, Jade Archive Xiaohua could not rule out the possibility that the fire ape was still lonely and now saw him as if it had found a home. "Silly child, when did this old man become your master?" Jade Archive Xiaohua used his hand to knock the fire ape's head 3 times and said with a smile. Jade Archive Xiaohua did not hide his words and directly used the language of the Xiaoyu continent. The fire ape heard it clearly. "Good master, father knows." The fire ape's words were still somewhat jerky. Jade Archive Xiaohua pricked up his ears to listen carefully, only to hear the fire ape crying and complaining. "This little one was adopted by master when I was young, but when this little one grew up, master went out to wander. This time, this little one did not know how many years had passed. Now, this little one finally sees master again. Hee, little one, you are wrong." Jade Archive Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "This old man is not your master. This old man just came on a whim and knew that there was a guest coming to visit. This old man has never seen you before. No, you are my master. There is no mistake." The fire ape stiffened its neck and said. Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a smile, "Since you say that I am your master, do you know my Dharma name?" The fire ape's face showed a painful expression and slightly shook its head. Reporting to master, this little one was still young and did not remember master's Dharma name. "That's right," Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a smile. "This old man is Patriarch Subhuti. You must remember clearly that this old man cannot be your master. This..." The fire ape hesitated slightly and knew that it was wrong. However, it caught out again and said, "Although you were not my master before, this little one will worship you as my master now. Do you think it is so easy to enter my door?" Jade Archive Xiaohua waved his hand and said with a smile, "Moreover, you are stubborn and will definitely cause a great disaster in the future. If this old man accepts you as my disciple, won't I be inviting trouble to myself? This little one absolutely does not dare." At this time, the fire ape was actually very obedient. It knelt on the ground and did not dare to say anything, only kowtowing. Looking at the fire ape, who had always flown into a rage and fought with him without saying a word, who would rather die than submit, suddenly become so pitiful, Xiaohua could not help but feel pity in his heart. He thought for a moment, waved his hand and said, "Forget it, let's not talk so much first. Since I can meet you here, it can be considered fate. This old man can teach you some magical powers, but you have to help this old man do something, and you have to swear not to mention this old man's Dharma name in the future. Yes, this little one understands. As long as I can call Master, 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 not to mention one thing, even if it is 10 or 100 things, this little one is willing to die for Master, Master," the fire ape said very emotionally. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand to help the fire ape up. He said, "How is it as serious as you say? This old man just wants you to protect an ordinary monk." "Yes, I will listen to Master's orders." The fire ape stood up and said with its head bowed. Jade Archive Xiaohua entered the Immortal's cave first, and said without turning his head, "Come with this old man." Previously, Jade Archive Xiaohua only used his method in the sky and had already created an Immortal's cave in this strange mountain. Now that he really came in, he found that there were many flaws in the Immortal's cave, and Xiaohua had to make up for it as he walked. Fortunately, the fire ape lowered its head and did not dare to overstep, following Xiaohua step by step, and also did not find anything. When they arrived at the main hall, Jade Archive Xiaohua sat on a cloud bed, and the fire ape obediently stood below with its head lowered. Xiaohua looked at the huge hall and felt embarrassed in his heart. Just now, he really showed off too much. He did not think so much and actually created such a huge hall in the illusion realm, but he did not think about getting a few disciples and so on. Fortunately, the fire ape was reserved and did not dare to ask more, and Jade Archive Xiaohua was too lazy to explain. -12. Chapter 3496. "Little guy, what's your name?" As if to cover up his embarrassment, Jade Archive Xiaohua casually asked. As soon as he said this, Jade Archive Xiaohua secretly laughed. Yes, the fire ape just came out of the spirit storage bag today and didn't even know how to speak before. How could he have a name? Sure enough, the fire ape's face turned red and bowed. "I haven't seen my parents since I was young. How could I have a name? If Master doesn't mind, please bestow a name. Bestow a name." Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could he give a name with his half-baked literary talent? However, Jade Archive Xiaohua's heart moved and nodded. "You're a monkey that became a spirit. Why don't you have the surname Yuan? And you want to have the ability to understand heaven and earth. Why don't you be called Tongtian? How about this? Yuan Tongtian! Yuan Tongtian! Good name, good name!" The fire ape happily scratched his ears and cheeks, kneeling on the ground and thanking. "Thank you, Master, for bestowing a name. Thank you, Master, for bestowing a name." Seeing the fire ape like this, Jade Archive Xiaohua was also somewhat happy. He raised his hand and said, "You don't need to kneel first. This old man's tribulation is coming, so I've already dismissed all my disciples. Now that I've met you, although I can't be your disciple, seeing that you're sincerely asking for guidance, I'll teach you a thing or two." "Thank you, Master, thank you, Master." The fire ape was overjoyed, but then he became worried. "Master, what kind of tribulation do you have? Can this little one block the tribulation for Master?" Jade Archive Xiaohua was quite moved. He waved his hand and said, "Cultivate well. When you know this old man's origin, maybe you can block the tribulation for this old man." "Yes, this little one will do his best to cultivate," the fire ape said very sincerely. "I hope to be able to help Master in the future." Then Jade Archive Xiaohua said, "Rest for a while. Let this old man think about what divine ability to teach you." "Master." Hearing this, the fire ape hurriedly said, "This little one wants to have 3 divine abilities. I don't know if Master can bestow them." "Ha, monkey is really straightforward." Jade Archive Xiaohua laughed. "Tell me, let this old man listen. Is this the first? I want to practice a good staff technique so that I can beat immortals and ghosts. If any Taoist dares to bully me, I will also use this staff technique to kill him. Sweat! Jade Archive Xiaohua curled his lips in his heart. Needless to say, the Taoist that Yuan Tongtian spoke of was himself. Well said! The Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a smile. This old man here has the 36 forms of the earth-penetrating staff technique. It's just right for you to use. Thank you, Master! Yuan Tongtian was overjoyed. Number 2, this little one wants to learn the art of transformation. Whether it's a human demon, insect, fish, flower, bird, wood, or bamboo, this little one can transform into anything. This? Jade Archive Xiaohua was in a bit of a dilemma. He did know the transfiguration technique, but he had never tried it himself. Master? Before the Jade Archive, Xiaohua did not immediately agree. Fire Ape Yuan Tongtian immediately smiled and said, If Master is not willing to teach, then just pretend that this little one did not say anything. That's not it. Jade Archive Xiaohua shook his head slightly. This old man's transfiguration technique is quite profound. I'm afraid that it won't be easy for you to master it. How about this? This old man will teach you a simple introductory technique and then teach you another technique to make up for it. Hee, thank you, Master. Thank you, Master! Yuan Tongtian's heart was filled with joy, as if he had never been this happy in his life. What about the third? Jade Archive Xiaohua wanted to know what Yuan Tongtian's third condition was. Is this the third? Yuan Tongtian did not hesitate at all and said with a smile, This little one has not thought of the third technique yet. After this disciple has thought of it, how about I come back to find Master? Jade Archive Xiaohua was puzzled at first, but then he felt some warmth in his heart. This was clearly an excuse for Yuan Tongtian to find him in the future. Who said that beasts are heartless? Demons are heartless? Forget it, you can think of the third condition first. This old man will teach you the magic cloud technique and divine sense technique. Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a wave of his sleeve. Yuan Tongtian was so excited that tears were about to fall. It seemed that no one in this world had ever treated him so well. Close your eyes. Don't resist. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled faintly and waved his sleeve. This old man will teach you the divine sense technique. Thank you, Master. Yuan Tongtian did not know what was meant by 5 hearts facing the sky. He hurriedly knelt on the ground, closed his eyes, and supported himself with his arms on the ground. Jade Archive Xiaohua stretched out his hand and suddenly stretched out several feet. He used his index finger to point at Yuan Tongtian's forehead. A crystal thread came out of his index finger and fell into Yuan Tongtian's body. Jade Archive Xiaohua taught Yuan Tongtian a part of the heavenly staff technique, the heavenly law embodiment technique, the transfiguration technique, and the cultivation method of spirit guidance. While Yuan Tongtian was comprehending the divine sense technique, Jade Archive Xiaohua hurriedly flew out of the cave, and only returned after several hours. When Jade Archive Xiaohua returned, Yuan Tongtian hurriedly greeted him and said somewhat anxiously, Master, you are back! This little one thought that you had already left. Hee, this old man still had some last things to do. I have just finished them. Jade Archive Xiaohua explained and asked, Have you fully comprehended these divine sense techniques? Yes, this little one has comprehended them all. Yuan Tongtian said respectfully. However, these divine sense techniques require years of cultivation. This little one does not know if I have understood them all. Good, tell me about your comprehension. Jade Archive Xiaohua sat on the cloud bed and said with closed eyes. Then Yuan Tongtian told him about his comprehension in detail. Jade Archive Xiaohua was very satisfied after hearing Yuan Tongtian's words. He corrected Yuan Tongtian's mistakes and explained the divine sense techniques again from beginning to end. Only then did he stop talking. Master! After Jade Archive Xiaohua finished explaining, Yuan Tongtian closed his eyes for more than half an hour and said respectfully, This disciple has firmly remembered it. However, speak! Seeing Yuan Tongtian hesitate, Jade Archive Xiaohua asked, The divine sense technique is very mysterious. This disciple is overjoyed after hearing it. However, this disciple seems to have the so-called divine sense, but this divine sense technique cannot be controlled. Isn't this divine sense technique a tree without roots? That's easy to say. Jade Archive Xiaohua understood that Fire Ape Yuan Tongtian's divine sense should be called elemental will. If he wanted to cultivate and control it, he would have to rely on Taoist spiritual objects. Coincidentally, he had the rainbow cloud. This item was originally used to stimulate the divine sense of Taoist sect disciples. It should also be effective on Yuan Tongtian. Of course, Yuan Tongtian did not need to stimulate his divine sense again. He only needed to use the rainbow cloud to strengthen his elemental will and use spirit guidance to control it. Seeing that Jade Archive Xiaohua was almost omnipotent, Yuan Tongtian became even more excited, almost jumping up and down in the main hall. Seeing Yuan Tongtian's happiness, Jade Archive Xiaohua's heart moved, wanting to inquire about Yuan Tongtian's origin, and even the origin of the other fire ape, as well as the origin of the male and female thunder beasts. However, just as Xiaohua was about to open his mouth, he swallowed the words back down. After all, these things were easy to pry. Although Yuan Tongtian might not be suspicious right now, Yuan Tongtian's spiritual cavities had already been opened. Who knew when he would wake up? If Jiang Luer's matter was delayed because of this, it would be too late for Xiaohua to regret. Forget it. Who doesn't have secrets? This Yuan Tongtian has always been arrogant and unruly, but in front of my so-called master, he is so well behaved. He can be considered a filial monkey. There's no need to fuss over it. Jade Archive Xiaohua dismissed the idea of pursuing the matter and took out the rainbow cloud for Yuan Tongtian to use. Sure enough, Jade Archive Xiaohua's prediction was correct. The rainbow cloud was equally effective on elemental will. It even caused a slight change in Yuan Tongtian's elemental will. It could be activated and tempered like the divine sense of a Taoist cultivator. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master. Yuan Tongtian did a somersault in the main hall and shouted, In the future, I can be as powerful as Lu Er. This guy. Lu Er? Jade Archive Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, Who is Lu Er? Lu Er macaque. Yuan Tongtian said unconcernedly, That guy has 6 ears. He is good at listening and can observe everything. It seems that there is nothing in the world that he doesn't know. I learned the divine sense from Master. If I practice more, I will definitely catch up with him in the future. Haha, I see. Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a smile. He is born with the divine sense. Your divine sense has a limited range. I'm afraid you can't compare with him. Yuan Tongtian was not happy. He waved his furry paws and shouted, If you don't want to compete, then don't compete. That guy is the most cunning and insidious. His whereabouts are always sneaky. In the past, when I needed his help, I searched all over Meng Mountains, but he didn't. Yuan Tongtian's Meng Mountains was like a bolt from the blue to Jade Archive Xiaohua's ears. It instantly reminded him of Master Qin Qin's death. Before she died, the green seal character, Lu, meant that the murderer was Lu Er macaque, wasn't it? A wave of hatred suddenly rose from Jade Archive Xiaohua's heart. Master! Yuan Tongtian suddenly panicked and said, Why is the main hall suddenly shaking? Why is it suddenly so cold in the cave? Jade Archive Xiaohua calmed himself down. He knew that he lost control of his emotions and affected the illusion. His face was gloomy, and he said coldly, Nothing. This old man's tribulation is coming. This cave, and even the Lingtai Fengsun mountain is about to collapse. Ah, Master, please come out with me. If you stay in this cave, won't you be in trouble? Yuan Tongtian said worriedly. Jade Archive Xiaohua saw the genuine concern in Yuan Tongtian's red eyes. The anger in his heart subsided. He waved his sleeves and said, It's fine for now. Since there's still time, this old man will teach you more. No! Master, I'd rather not learn than waste your time. Yuan Tongtian replied without hesitation. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Hurry up, what else do you not understand? Xiaohua said impatiently. Yuan Tong Tian didn't understand why Jade Archive Xiaohua suddenly changed his expression. He was afraid and didn't dare to say more. He said in a low voice, I really like the art of transformation. It's just that I haven't been able to find the trick. Close your eyes and open your mouth. Jade Archive Xiaohua said calmly. -12. Chapter 3497. Yuan Tongtian hurriedly sat down, closed his eyes and opened his mouth. Xiaohua took out the rejuvenation elixir. He knew that Sixered Macaque had killed Master Qin Qin for the rejuvenation elixir, and he had also heard the Elder Wu of Huta village say that the rejuvenation elixir had some effect on the art of transformation. Yuan Tongtian took the rejuvenation pill and opened his eyes. He looked at Xiaohua timidly and said, Master, don't be angry. I'm stupid and didn't cultivate well. I'll cultivate well in the future. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, This has nothing to do with you. Yes, Master. Yuan Tongtian lowered his head and didn't dare to ask. How do you feel? Can you transform? Xiaohua asked. Yuan Tongtian's face turned red. After a while, he whispered, I still can't. Well, don't worry. This isn't something that can be cultivated in a day or two. Xiaohua nodded. But I don't have enough time, so I can only pass it to you in a hurry. You'll have to rely on yourself in the future. Oh right, wait a moment. Xiaohua pointed his finger, and a mother-child's spirit fruit appeared on top of Yuan Tongtian's head. Eh? Yuan Tongtian was surprised. He wanted to say something, but when he saw Xiaohua's gloomy face, he quickly shut his mouth. Xiaohua pointed his finger, and the mother-child's spirit fruit turned into a ball of golden liquid. The golden talisman inside the liquid was like a fish swimming in water. Don't resist! Jade Archive Xiaohua said indifferently. With a grab of his hand, Yuan Tongtian flew into the air like a baby. That golden liquid suddenly expanded and covered Yuan Tongtian within. Xiaohua opened his mouth and blew. A golden light fell into the liquid, and the liquid immediately boiled. Then, like a big hand rubbing it, it changed into all kinds of shapes. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, Xiaohua shouted. Quick! The golden liquid suddenly shrank, and Yuan Tongtian's figure was revealed. The mother-child spirit fruit's liquid had completely seeped into his body. Without waiting for his body to land on the ground, a golden light flashed around Yuan Tongtian's body, and a somewhat strange-looking human figure appeared in midair. It was Yuan Tongtian who had used the transfiguration technique to transform. Humph! You've only learned a little, and you're so arrogant. You can't be taught. Xiaohua pointed his finger, and a bolt of lightning struck the strange human figure. Yuan Tongtian's body was revealed. Yuan Tongtian had already appeared. He quickly kneeled on the ground and cried, Master, don't be angry, don't be angry, I just want to see, who allowed you to call yourself a disciple? Jade Archive Xiaohua sneered. Didn't this old man say it before? You are not this old man's disciple, so don't say that you are this old man's disciple in front of others. Master doesn't recognize me as his disciple, but in my heart, Master is my master. He will be my master for life. Yuan Tongtian's eyes were filled with tears, as if he had a premonition. Xiaohua said Xiaohua's words. This is just a deal. You only need to help this old man protect one person. We're not master and disciple. Yes, I know I'm not worthy to be master's disciple. Yuan Tongtian was very sad and said in a low voice, Master, please tell me the name of that person, and where that person is now. This old man doesn't know this person's name, nor does this old man know where he appeared. However, this old man observed the sky at night, and knew that this person should be within 300 li. He should be a 5 or 6-year-old little monk. According to this old man's divination, that little monk should be drifting with the river. You can look for him near the Chen River. Remember, you must protect him silently, and don't let the little monk know. Xiaohua didn't dare to tell Yuan Tongtian the name of Jianglu directly. He simply said a few words, and with a wave of his hand, a big black stick was thrown in front of Yuan Tongtian. he said coldly. You and I are finished, you can go. Master. If it was an ordinary Yuan Tongtian who saw the big black stick, he would definitely be happy. But how could he be happy now? Go. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the big stick flew into Yuan Tongtian's hand, and his body disappeared. Master, master, master! Yuan Tongtian called out his master several times, tears streaming down his face. Unfortunately, Xiaohua didn't appear again. The whole hall began to shake, and stones and other things fell. Yuan Tongtian had no choice but to kneel on the ground and kowtow 9 times. Only then did he walk out of the main hall, turning his head 3 times with each step. Yuan Tongtian looked very sad. Even if a stone fell on his shoulder, he didn't care. He was afraid that he would anger Jade Archive Xiaohua. Sigh. Xiaohua frowned in midair. This fire ape is loyal and affectionate. Next, Xiaohua reached out his hand again, and the storage bag fell into his hand. He reached out and pulled the 6-eared macaque out of the bag by its throat, which was something he rarely did. Looking at the 6-eared macaque with its eyes closed, Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He only needed to use a little strength, and the 6-eared macaque would be squashed like a fly. That would be revenge for Master Ni Qin. But Xiaohua was no longer the old Xiaohua. His hands were like cast iron, and he held the 6-eared macaque tightly. But he didn't use any strength. The 6-eared macaque was the culprit behind Master Ni Qin's death, but Master Ni Qin had clearly told Xiaohua to not avenge him. Xiaohua could faintly understand the remorse in Master Ni Qin's heart. This was Master Ni Qin's karma, not Xiaohua's. Because of the 6-eared macaque's attack, Master Ni Qin died on the night of the blood moon. This ending was perfect for Master Ni Qin, and in this respect, the 6-eared macaque did not do anything unforgivable. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's face gradually turned green, and the gloom in his heart disappeared. He looked at the 6-eared macaque and shook his head. Forget it. Blessings are blessings, and sins are sins. Everyone has their blessings, and everyone has their sins. Don't say that the heavens are unfair, because the time is not right. You may be the sins of others, but you are also the blessings of others. However, I is I, and you must not have the impression of I in your mind. Leaving it in your mind is blasphemy to I. Thinking of this, Xiaohua reached out his hand and touched the 6-eared macaque's forehead. A 5-colored light flashed, and nothing else happened. What about Yuan Tongtian? Xiaohua thought to himself. Should I erase his memory as well? Sigh, forget it. There is no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. Although Xiaohua did not intend to take the 6-eared macaque's life with his own hands, he was determined not to let the 6-eared macaque stay in the space anymore. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at Yuan Tongtian, who was walking out of Bir Fangsun Mountain, and raised his hand. Rumble! An earth-shaking sound rang out, and the entire Bir Fangsun Mountain collapsed. Yuan Tongtian had just stepped on flames and flew up when Jade Archive Xiaohua immediately grabbed him. Master! Yuan Tongtian, who was out of the space, could only see the original scenery of the Pure Land. Looking at the place where he came from, the Bir Fangsun Mountain had completely disappeared. Yuan Tongtian was so sad that he knelt on the ground and cried. This little one is really stupid. I didn't think that I would have to say goodbye to you as soon as I saw you. Although you don't allow this little one to call you master, you are my master. This little one only has you in my heart. Even if this little one is smashed to pieces, I will still complete your orders. This little one is going to find the little monk related to Qingjiang. After he finished crying and speaking, Yuan Tongtian kowtowed again. Only then did he put the black iron rod on his shoulder. With one hand on one end of the iron rod, he walked in a certain direction, while facing the afterglow of the setting sun. The shadow behind him was very long, just like the sadness in his heart. Xiaohua was hidden in the air. Looking at the direction Yuan Tongtian was walking in was completely different from Qingjiang. He did not make a sound. The radius of more than 500 li was not big, so Yuan Tongtian could definitely find Jianluer. However, thinking about Yuan Tongtian's filial piety these few days, Xiaohua felt a little reluctant. Even cultivators have feelings. Seeing Yuan Tongtian walk away, Xiaohua's face turned cold. He used the wind escape technique and flew towards the snowy mountain. As for the six-eared macaque, although Xiaohua would not kill it, he would definitely not treat it well. When he passed by a dangerous place filled with fog, Xiaohua shook his hand and threw the six-eared macaque, whose memory he had already erased, down. Xiaohua knew that the six-eared macaque would not fall to its death. However, he did not want to worry about what would happen to it after it was seriously injured. Although he did not know when Jianglue would wake up, he did not even know if Jianglue would wake up. However, with Jianglue in the hands of the great Zen master, he was much more confident than in Xiaohua's space. Xiaohua absolutely believed that the great Zen master would not only be jealous of Jianglue, who was only 5 or 6 years old, but also curious. Furthermore, with the great Zen master's status, Xiaohua also believed that he would definitely not harm Jianglue's life. The worst-case scenario was that Nirvana Zen master would try his best to destroy Jianglue's state of solitude due to jealousy. The most likely scenario was that Nirvana Zen master would try his best to comprehend Jianglue's state of solitude. No matter what the situation was, it would be beneficial and harmless to Jianglue. It was something that Xiaohua could not do. The worst-case scenario is that Nirvana Zen master is unable to wake Jianglue up. Then the next time I come to Nirvana, I will take Jianglue away. Xiaohua, who was flying hurriedly in midair, thought so. Moreover, this Zhao's Buddha Saraira is also comprehending Buddhism day and night. Perhaps this Xiao will be able to find the way to enter state of solitude. At this time, Xiaohua was not too worried about Black Wind Ridge. After all, there was a large formation there. What he was worried about was the space vein. Sun Jian said that the space vein would collapse soon, but Xiaohua felt that it would take at least more than a month. However, Xiaohua had already spent a month in the Pure Land world. There was not much time left for him. -12. Chapter 3498. Xiaohua was very clear that there must be a direct path from here to the snowy mountain. If he flew straight there, he would definitely arrive very quickly. However, Xiaohua didn't dare to fly directly like other people. He didn't dare to believe in his sense of direction on the continent. He could only go to Saint River first, and then return to the snowy mountain from there. Fortunately, since Xiaohua had a sense of direction in the void, the spirit chi heaven opened. Although his sense of direction on the continent didn't improve fundamentally, it still had some influence. Xiaohua was somewhat off when he was hurrying, but this deviation didn't seem to be big because he was very careful. After a few days, Xiaohua touched Saint River. Of course, the location of Saint River was definitely different from before. It was far from the village where Wang Bianfei was. Immediately, Xiaohua slightly identified the direction and found a small temple on the left. He asked about the snowy mountain's location and once again rushed into the sky. Only now did Xiaohua know that there was more than one snowy mountain in the Western Paradise. The snowy mountain where the exquisite temple was located was definitely not the most famous. It was just the closest to Saint River. At first, Xiaohua was still somewhat uncertain. However, seeing some familiar scenery, Xiaohua slowly felt relieved. Finally, in his divine sense, the divine sense mark he made at the snowy mountain appeared. Only then did he feel completely relieved. Then, he once again changed the direction that had deviated by a lot and rushed into the snowy mountain. At this time, it was snowing like goose feathers on the snowy mountain. The fluttering snowflakes were exactly the same as when Xiaohua came out of the spatial vein that day. Xiaohua stood in the sky above the exquisite temple and looked at the water vapor in the pool. He looked at the main hall of the exquisite temple as if he had never left. However, things were still the same, but people were different. The snowy mountain hadn't changed and the exquisite temple hadn't changed. However, the old monk who swept the floor was missing. The snow in front of the main hall was extremely thick and no one would sweep it. If it wasn't for the bright sun, the snow would have covered the entire exquisite temple. With a sigh, Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense and looked at the place where the old monk's body was burned. Only then did he withdraw his Buddhist sense and return it to the exquisite temple. Then, with a wave of his hand, the broom placed in the corner of the temple fell into Xiaohua's hands. Xiaohua started to clean the corner in front of the main hall, just like the old monk did that day. Of course, Xiaohua's speed of sweeping the snow was very fast. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the entire courtyard was cleaned up. However, looking at the endless falling snowflakes, Xiaohua knew that before long, the open space in front of the main hall would be covered with snow again. Suddenly, Xiaohua had an idea. Bringing Wang Bianfei and his mother back to the hidden immortal continent might not be an excellent choice. It would be better to let Wang Bianfei and his mother live in this Shaolinglong temple, and then give them some money and food, so that they would not have any difficulties in life. Of course, after thinking about this, Xiaohua laughed involuntarily. This snowy mountain was extremely high. Wang Bianfei's cultivation had yet to reach completion, so he couldn't freely go up and down. Wang Bianfei's mother was also immortal, so she couldn't go up and down from such a high place. If he left them in such a dangerous place, unless they didn't go up and down the mountain again, there would definitely be danger. These two people were not like the old monk. They did not have too many worldly requirements, especially Wang Bianfei's mother. She did not cultivate. If she stayed here for a long time, she might have complaints. These complaints would definitely affect Wang Bianfei. If he did this, it would be better to send them back to the village. Forget it. Xiaohua shook his head slightly and threw away this idea. He walked towards other places in the Shaolinglong temple. He looked at the stove, looked at the main hall, and finally came to the old monk's hut. He looked at the old wooden cabinets around and then turned around to leave. But when he turned around, Xiaohua frowned and said to himself, "That's not right. The old monk is an ordinary monk. He doesn't know how to fast. Even the Buddha who has the divine ability of Buddhism has to eat vegetarian food. But why do I only see a little butter tea at the stove? Could it be that the old monk doesn't need to eat?" Saying this, Xiaohua walked to the front of the wooden cabinets and looked at them. He opened the cabinets one by one and found the dark wooden box. After opening it, he saw the dozen or so cabinets inside. Huh! What is this? Looking at the few thumb-sized dark beads at the bottom of the dozen or so cabinets, Xiaohua was curious. He reached out his hand and took one out. He put it in front of his nose and sniffed it. Xiaohua nodded slightly and said with a smile, "So it's like this. This is a pill refined from spirit herbs. It's somewhat similar to the fasting pill. But it seems that these pills are more useful than the fasting pill. The old monk took these pills to maintain his vitality, right? It's a pity that there's no pill formula here. Otherwise, this Xiao could refine some." Xiaohua smacked his lips, looking very regretful. He then put away the bead in his hand. He didn't touch the other cabinets. He still closed the wooden box and put it back in its original place. After taking one last look at the Shaolinglong temple, Xiaohua flew into the sky and didn't look back. He knew in his heart that he didn't know when he would come to the snowy mountain again. Who knew what changes would happen to the Shaolinglong temple at that time? Unfortunately, after flying for a while, Xiaohua suddenly stopped in midair. His face carried a kind of excitement, as if he had thought of something. He immediately turned around and landed at the place where he first left his divine sense mark. After looking around, he actually used the earth escape technique to rush into the snowy mountain. After a full half an hour, Xiaohua's figure finally came out of the snowy mountain. His face was full of regret. He muttered to himself, "AI, what a pity! This Xiao already has the materials to lay down a teleportation array. But to lay down a teleportation array is not something that can be done in a month. It will take several years. How can this Xiao stay here for long? Forget it. I'll leave my divine sense here first. I'll lay down the teleportation array in the hidden immortal continent first. I'll think about it later when I come to the Western Paradise. If there's a teleportation array that connects the two continents in the future, won't this Xiao be able to come and go as he pleases?" After saying that, Xiaohua could only fly into the sky again and rush to the place where the space meridian was previously opened. A faint green light flashed between Xiaohua's eyebrows as he opened his delusion breaker eye. His silver-white eyes stared at the void as a silver beam of light as thick as the mouth of a bowl fell into the void. One wang! After a moment, as the silver beam of light rotated and produced a huge rumbling sound, a space crack slowly appeared. When the crack was big enough, Xiaohua closed his delirium eyes with a satisfied expression. Obviously, the essence of the void-penetrating beast was very useful. In just a month, Xiaohua's delirium eyes had made great progress. Looking at the space meridian, it was overflowing with a destructive aura, but it seemed that the situation had not reached the point of completely collapsing. Xiaohua was overjoyed and was about to float in, but at this moment, Xiaohua felt a chill in his heart. He couldn't help but turn his head to look at a place. That place was filled with wind and snow, and there was nothing abnormal. Xiaohua frowned, and his expression changed slightly. He didn't dare to stay for a long time and hurriedly rushed into the space crack. After a moment, the space crack slowly closed, leaving no trace behind. The snow was still falling, and the wind was still blowing. In the direction Xiaohua was looking, not to mention 100 miles, even 1,000 miles or 10,000 miles away, there was nothing abnormal. However, what about 1,000,000 miles or even 10,000 miles away? It was a little different. This was a hall of unknown size, and he didn't know where this hall was located. He only knew that the entire hall was filled with Buddhist light. Layers of golden light scattered in all directions like the sun. In the entire hall, there seemed to be only one person, but there also seemed to be hundreds of millions of people. At the head of the hall, a 90-foot-tall golden body of a Buddha statue sat upright on a 9-grade lotus platform. Around the golden body, in the void, there was a constant flow of simple yet substantial power of faith. When the power of faith rushed into the golden body, it was like thousands of streams returning to the sea, without the slightest ripple. However, the flashing Buddha light around the golden body went against the power of faith and also disappeared into the void. In addition to this golden Buddha statue, there seemed to be countless Buddha statues in the hall. These Buddha statues didn't shine under the golden statue, and their figures couldn't be seen. Even if one were to scan them with their naked eyes or Buddhist sense, they wouldn't be able to detect them. Not only that, but behind this 90-foot-tall golden statue, there was a Buddhist light wheel that was even larger than the 90-foot-tall golden statue. Above this light wheel, there was an uncountable amount of Buddhist light that was as thin as hair rotating. Every time the Buddhist light flashed, a small world would appear in the Buddhist light. Inside each small world, there would be the creation of a new world. Inside each small world, there would be countless flowers, birds, insects, and fish. Similarly, inside each small world, there would be tens of thousands of creatures that would appear and multiply. When this Buddhist light was annihilated, the small world would collapse, be destroyed, and die. The entire small world would be reduced to a void. Looking at the golden statue again, there were hundreds of millions of swastikas condensing into golden swastikas of various sizes. These golden swastikas were born as if they were breathing, and they were also swimming like fish. All kinds of mysteries and layers of reincarnation seemed to be evolving within these golden swastikas. Below the golden statue were 9 lotus platforms. Each lotus platform was as heavy as 10,000 caddies, and each lotus platform was thick and solid. The surface of the lotus platforms also had golden swastikas, but these golden swastikas were like tiny heavenly dragons. These heavenly dragons swam on one lotus platform and rushed to the other lotus platforms in a very orderly manner. The golden swastikas on the 9 lotus platforms connected together like an isolated world. It was as if the lotus platforms were above the hall, but in reality, it was unknown where they were. The golden statue's face was solemn, and a supreme pressure came from between its brows. In its slightly opened eyes, not only was there wisdom that could see through all things and control all things, but there was also compassion that bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind. Anyone who saw it, whether they were immortals or mortals, would be filled with admiration. If this golden statue wasn't Mahavairocana, then which Buddhist lord was it? -12. Chapter 3499. At this moment, the Mahavairocana revered Buddha smiled as he held a flower in his hand and chanted mantras. Countless heavenly flowers fell from the main hall and countless heavenly maidens danced in the sky. There were also countless heavenly dragons cruising below the hall. The Buddha said, "For the Bodhisattva's voice to the people of the world. When the great teachings are widely spread and the great teachings are performed, all are gathered in the Seven Treasures lecture hall in order. At the beginning, the Buddha's voice to the people of the world was heard. There was no one who did not happily understand what they had learned. Everyone gains according to their talents. There is a natural breeze in all directions, blowing the treasure tree to make 500 notes. At this moment, I am overjoyed beyond words." When the golden body finished speaking, the flowers withered and the heavenly maidens mourned. Even the thousands of heavenly dragons wailed and wept with joy. The revered Buddha's words are too wonderful for words. A pious voice sounded. Above the main hall that seemed to be void, thousands of Buddha's rays were produced. It was unknown how many Buddha's bodies that could not be seen clearly before appeared. Inside, an old man with a simple face put his palms together and said, "This Ananda Sutra is the sharpening of suffering. Anyone who can comprehend the samadhi within will be able to have a Buddha in his heart." Amitabha. Everyone in the main hall chanted the Buddha's name in unison. Their bodies emitted Buddha's rays at the same time. The Buddha's rays above the main hall welcomed the Buddha's rays of the golden body. The golden body of the revered Buddha was like the sun. Many of the golden bodies of the Buddha statues were not as bright as the stars in the night sky. The main hall that was originally a single Buddha suddenly became lively. Below the main hall, there were 4 ferocious and imposing Vajras standing in front of the main hall door. Each of them held a Buddha's treasure that was full of evil spirit. On both sides of the main hall, there were 500 arhats. These arhats were either sitting, lying down, standing, dancing, or shaking their heads. After the arhats, there were 3,000 Vajras. These Vajras had different faces and figures. There were even some who were of different species. After the Vajras, there were countless venerables and indigo Buddhas. These venerables and indigo Buddhas were all devout as they chanted the Heart Sutra with their palms together. Above the main hall, to the left of the Mahavairocana revered Buddha was a Buddha's body that was 90 feet tall. That Buddha's face looked miserable with thousands of wrinkles. The Buddha's rays were auspicious, just like the rebirth of the revered Buddhas. However, the Buddha's rays were mostly waning, with no signs of revival. Before this Buddha's body was an ancient lamp with dim light. Wasn't that Buddha's? As Buddha's Buddha, the Buddha's rays, the Buddha's Buddha's the Buddha's rays. Buddha's Buddha was Buddha was Buddha was Buddha was Buddha was Buddha Buddha was Buddha. In front of the Mahavairocana world revered one, under the 9-grade lotus platform, there was a golden light of 80 feet around his left hand. However, the golden light was empty. Not to mention the golden body, there wasn't even a human figure. On the other hand, on the right side of the Mahavairocana world, a bodhisattva with a face full of unswerving determination radiated a Buddhist light that was 80 feet wide. However, if one took a closer look, the bodhisattva standing there with the staff in his hand was different from the Buddha Lord. Although the bodhisattva was a statue of great forbearance and great wish, the Buddha light around the bodhisattva flashed with traces of bloody light, filled with the aura of the netherworld. The bodhisattva's golden body was close to nothingness, with only a faint outline. The faint power of faith was generated vertically from the void, slowly filling the thin outline. Wasn't this bodhisattva the Namo great aspiration Ksitigarbha bodhisattva who would never become a Buddha if hell wasn't empty? Now, the Namo great aspiration Ksitigarbha bodhisattva's Dharma image closed his eyes and stood on the rightmost side of the Mahavairocana world revered one. The leftmost side of the Namo great aspiration Ksitigarbha bodhisattva's Dharma image was also nothingness. After the quaint old man finished speaking, another Arhat taming dragon stood up. He put his palms together and bowed, asking, Revered One's Dharma is boundless. Today, the Ananda Sutra has allowed me to comprehend a lot. The last time I heard Revered One explain the Ananda Sutra was 600 years ago. That day, Revered One only said that this sutra shouldn't be said too much. I wonder why Revered One suddenly began to talk about it today. Buddha said the world doesn't hear of suffering, but happiness doesn't exist? People often think about difficulties, but if they don't experience happiness, then everything will prosper? My great Thunderclap Temple's Bodhisattva has attained enlightenment for a long time. We live in comfort and have fewer worries. If I don't talk about the Ananda Sutra, what Dharma will I talk about? Once the Mahavairakana World Revered One spoke, the heavenly flowers fell in disorder, and the Buddha light was limitless. That Arhat-taming dragon bowed and sat down. He closed his eyes and pondered. After the Arhats, there were those who had obtained the Dharma with smiles on their faces. There were also those who were puzzled and frowned. There were all kinds of expressions. At this moment, a heavenly king at the door of the hall called out in a deep voice, "Revered One, wise Manjushri Bodhisattva has returned by decree. Announce." Joy appeared on the Mahavairakana World Revered One's face as he opened his mouth and said. Following the Revered One's words, the door of the hall opened, revealing the magnificent scene of thousands of lotuses in front of the hall. These lotuses were all blooming with 9-colored brilliance. Under the lotuses, there was a boundless green water. This green water didn't have any waves. Billions of golden inscriptions were hidden in this green water. Every drop of green water showed the birth and destruction of a small kiliacosm. When the Bodhisattvas saw the door of the hall open, they were all delighted. They all said, "Namo wise Manjushri Bodhisattva, as I heard, for a time, Buddha gave the tree to the garden of solitude in the Shiwei kingdom. Together with the 8,000 monks of Bhikkhu, Elder Sariputra, Mahakasyapa, and so on, were also." The chanting turned into thousands of golden lotuses that flew out from the hall and entered one of the lotuses. That lotus suddenly grew bigger. When it rose to the height of 80 feet, Manjushri Bodhisattva's golden body appeared. A Buddha cloud appeared under his feet and carried the 80 feet golden body into the hall. Manjushri Bodhisattva entered the hall. He put his palms together and bowed. Ahmedba, disciple Manjushri greets the Revered One. After 9 lifetimes of training, you have finally achieved enlightenment. From now on, you will not enter the cycle of reincarnation and fall into the mortal world. Your golden body is clean and your Buddha heart is stable. You will no longer have any fate with the mortal world. I congratulate you, Mahavairakana World Revered One said with a smile. Thank you, Revered One. Manjushri Bodhisattva bowed respectfully. Manjushri, before you return to your position, I have to remind you, Mahavairakana World Revered One said again. I think you already know when you are in the Lotus Platform realm. My Buddhism sect has 9 transformations of the golden body. You are only at the first level now. If you want to live as long as the heavens and become immortal, you have to go through 9 transformations before you can complete it. Moreover, your cultivation of Buddhism is still shallow. You are still far from being accepted into the Buddhist kingdom. You cannot be arrogant and remain stagnant. Thank you, Revered One. I understand. Manjushri Bodhisattva nodded and said. Mahavairakana World Revered One was very happy and said, Since that's the case, Manjushri Bodhisattva, return to your position. More than half of the 4 Bodhisattvas in front of me have returned to their positions. Hearing that, Manjushri Bodhisattva's face turned solemn. He walked toward the flashing golden light on the left of Mahavairakana World Revered One. When his golden body merged with the golden light, the Buddha light behind his head shone brightly. It went straight to the top of the hall. When the Buddha light condensed, thousands of feet of Buddha light filled the entire hall. Thousands of power of faith came from the void and fell into his golden body. No matter if it was the heavenly flower, the heavenly lady, or the heavenly dragon, they all came to congratulate him. Namo Great Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva! Namo Great Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva! The sound of chanting came from all over the hall. Good! Mahavairakana World Revered One was very happy. When he was about to say something, suddenly, Under his right hand, the gap between Manjushri Bodhisattva and Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva suddenly flashed with brilliance. The Buddha light that was a few times stronger than Manjushri Bodhisattva's instantly appeared. In a moment, it formed an 8-foot shadow. Even Mahavairakana world-revered one was surprised. Congratulations, world-revered one! The Dipankara archaic Buddha on the left smiled. First, Namo Great Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva has returned. Now, Namo Great Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva has returned. Our blessed land world's Buddha light shines upon all. Congratulations, world-revered one! All the Buddhas congratulated him in unison. However, the joy on Mahavairakana world-revered one's face wasn't what they had imagined. Seeing this, the Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled. World-revered one, Manjushri Bodhisattva has returned. Our Thunder Sound Temple had a Bodhisattva Buddha fruit, which is our blessed land world's merit. When Samantabhadra Bodhisattva returned, our Thunder Sound Temple didn't have any Buddha signs. So, the Buddha Kingdom's Buddha Child's 9 transformations golden body should have returned, right? Dipankara archaic Buddha. Mahavairakana world-revered one pondered for a moment, and said in a low voice, Have you received any message from the Buddha Kingdom's main body? Dipankara archaic Buddha shook his head slightly and didn't say anything. There are so many accidents. I'm afraid there's a problem. A miserable expression appeared on Mahavairakana world-revered one's face. Amitabha. There will always be accidents. If there weren't any accidents, the 3 continents would have already fallen into our hands. Dipankara archaic Buddha didn't care at all and answered with a smile. At this moment, many Buddhas at the side of the main hall also had strange expressions on their faces. After all, no matter which Buddhas wanted to attain fruition, they would only come to the Thunder Sound Temple because of Mahavairakana world-revered one's request, and the Heavenly King went to receive them. How could they appear out of nowhere like this? World-revered one, the golden lotus in the receiving pond is shining. I'm afraid that Samantabhadra Bodhisattva has arrived. The Heavenly King in front of the hall's door hurriedly reported. Announce. Mahavairakana world-revered one sighed in his heart and said. At the same time, with the Buddhist oracle, the door of the main hall slowly opened. In the lotus pond where Manjushri had walked out, the Buddhist light shone brightly again. One of the lotuses was lifted high, and it was dozens of feet higher than the other lotuses. An extremely strong Buddhist light fell vertically from the sky and covered the lotuses. In the Buddhist light, the lotuses suddenly expanded to more than 8 feet. Different from when Manjushri had appeared, the lotuses shrank rapidly after reaching 8 feet and expanded again. After 3 times, the Buddhist light disappeared and the lotuses bloomed. A bodhisattva wearing a 5 Buddha golden crown and a cassock walked out of the lotuses. The bodhisattva held a rui scepter in his left hand and looked solemn. When he came out of the lotuses, he didn't enter the main hall like Manjushri. Instead, he put his palms together and bowed, saying, Disciple Samantabhadra greets the world-revered one. -12. Chapter 3500. Samantabhadra, you are the 3rd transformation golden body. Now, enter the lotus pond and rebuild your body. Mahavairakana said. Sure enough, after the light of Buddha disappeared, only a faint outline was left on Samantabhadra's golden body. Not to mention the lotus seat, even the entire golden body was made of lines. Disciple obeys Venerable One's order. Samantabhadra lowered his head and said, not daring to refute. His body slowly sank into the pool of green water under the lotus. Gugugugge. As Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's golden body soaked into the lotus cleansing pond, bubbles appeared in the green water. Hundreds of millions of small kiliacosms emerged from the bubbles and rushed into Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's golden body. At the same time, the golden inscriptions in the green water gathered on Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's golden body. Layers of Buddhist light appeared from the golden body. The heavenly flowers and fairies appeared again, dancing around the lotus cleansing pond with thousands of Sanskrit chants. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva only flew out of the lotus cleansing pool after a few minutes. Rumble. The sound was like thunder. The power of faith that flowed like water was born from the void and poured into Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's golden body. Behind the golden body, the Buddha's light was shining brightly. At this time, Samantabhadra's golden body had condensed, especially under Samantabhadra's feet. 8 lotus seats appeared out of thin air, carrying Samantabhadra into the main hall of Layin Temple. After paying his respects to Mahavairakana, Samantabhadra followed Buddha's order and ascended to the Namo Great Movement Samantabhadra's position on the right hand of the Buddha Lord. Immediately, the whole hall was filled with sounds of chanting. At this time, Samantabhadra Mahasattva is in front of Tathagata, sitting on the lotus seat of Shitsi, receiving the power of Buddha and entering Samantabhadra. The name of this samadhi is, all Buddhas Vairocana Tathagata are hiding within, and all Buddhas are equal, and can be shown to the public in the Dharma realm, vast and unhindered, the same as the void. The Dharma realm sea vortex, nothing can enter, born from all samadhi, it can include all Dharma realms. The wisdom of all Buddhas of the 3 eras are born from this, and all Buddhas of the 10 directions can be shown. In a dust, there is the world sees dust, and in a flash, there is the world sees dust, and in front of a Buddha, there is the world sees dust, and in front of a Buddha, there is the world sees dust, and in front of a Buddha, there is the world sees dust, and Samantabhadra. When the Bodhisattvas finished chanting, the entire Thunder Sound Temple shone brightly with Buddhist light. The Bodhisattva's Buddhist light shot up to the sky and formed their own Dharma images. The entire Thunder Sound Temple's main hall was filled with countless strange phenomena. Congratulations, revered one of the world. After a while, Fu Huluohan clasped his palms together. Although he was congratulating them, the sorrow on his face did not lessen. 2 out of the 3 bodhisattvas of the Layin Temple have returned in one day. That Namo Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva almost attained fruition earlier. Given enough time, he will definitely return to the Buddha. Amitabha, Fu Huluohan is right. Dipankara nodded. If it wasn't for Mahavairakana revered one of the world's teachings, how could the Pure Land world's fate with Buddhism flourish? How could the Buddhist light of the Buddhism sect illuminate the 3 continents? Even Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was attracted by the Buddhist light of the Pure Land world. That's why he chose to undergo the Golden Body 3rd stage here. Amitabha, revered one of the world's merits are boundless. All the bodhisattvas chanted. Fu Huluohan also said, according to my thoughts, that Namo Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva is now cultivating in the hidden immortal continent. When the time is right, he will definitely attain fruition. Think about it, the hidden immortal continent, which is controlled by the Confucian cultivators, actually has 3 bodhisattvas attaining fruition. What a huge insult to the Confucian cultivators! After Fu Huluohan finished speaking, all the bodhisattvas started whispering to each other. Every bodhisattva's face was filled with excitement. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva seemed to have just condensed his golden body in the Pure Land world. He didn't understand what everyone was talking about. He glanced at the empty seat to the right of Mahavairakana revered one of the world and frowned slightly. He whispered, revered one of the world, is there still no news of Namo Dang Lishing Maitreya? According to what I know, the future Buddha Lord has already descended to the 3 continents. However, where he is and how he cultivates are still a mystery. Mahavairakana revered one of the world's whispers replied. Namo Dang Lishing Maitreya. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva chanted the name of Buddha. He pondered for a while and whispered, revered one of the world's Pure Land world, I'm willing to make a great vow. I'll use the power of this world to search for Maitreya's whereabouts. I'll ask the future Buddha Lord to ascend to the Thunder Temple and become the Buddha Lord. Good. Mahavairakana revered one of the world smiled. It's good that you have such a great vow. After a little rest and familiarize yourself with the situation of the 3 continents, you'll complete your merit. As you wish, revered one of the world's Buddhas. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was overjoyed. He put his palms together and thanked him. Before Mahavairakana revered one of the world's Buddhas wanted to say something, his solemn expression, which had never frowned for thousands of years, suddenly moved slightly. Immediately, a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. The Buddha light behind his golden body soared into the sky like flames. The Buddha seal with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground also moved at the same time. Revered one of the world? Not only were the Buddhas surprised, even the Dipankara archaic Buddha was shocked. He asked curiously, "Is there any Buddha sign?" The Buddha light surrounding the Mahavairakana revered one of the world's Buddhas was as bright as the sun. It spun rapidly for a long time before it slowly came to a stop. He slowly opened his slightly closed eyes and looked at a certain place in the Pure Land world. He whispered, "Ananda has returned." "Good." Dipankara archaic Buddha clapped his hands and said, "There are so many good things happening in the Pure Land world today. Even Ananda's 9th reincarnation has descended into the Pure Land world. Congratulations, revered one of the world. Sai, what's there to be happy about?" The Mahavairakana revered one of the world's Buddhas smiled bitterly. "Ananda insisted on walking his own path, which has already deviated from the Buddha's principles. Even with my ability, I can't see where he is. Revered one of the world, since Ananda has descended into our Pure Land world, how can he escape from our Buddha's hands?" The Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled slightly. Then, he waved his hand and said, "Today's preaching has ended. All Buddhas step down." "Yes, Buddha!" All the Buddhas replied in unison and slowly disappeared. "Manjushri Bodhisattva, please wait!" The Dipankara archaic Buddha suddenly said. "Yes, revered one." The Manjushri Bodhisattva immediately stopped his disappearing golden body and answered. The Mahavairakana revered one of the world's Buddhas didn't understand what the Dipankara archaic Buddha was talking about. After all the Buddhas left, he asked curiously, "Dipankara archaic Buddha, what are you doing? I'm also responsible for Ananda's matter." The Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled and said, "That day, it was the revered one's preaching. I spoke too much and caused Ananda's doubts. Therefore, I want to make up for my mistake that day." "How do you want to make up for it?" The Manjushri Bodhisattva was curious. "Did the revered one start comprehending the Mahayana Buddhism 10,000 years ago? Have you attained great mastery?" The Dipankara archaic Buddha asked with a smile. "Naturally, it has already attained great mastery." The Mahavairakana revered one nodded and said, "This Buddhism has already been recorded into the Tripitaka Buddhist scripture, which is kept in the scripture repository. The Mahayana Buddhism has yet to be preached by the revered one. I'm afraid you have some reservations about it." The Dipankara archaic Buddha asked calmly. "Indeed." The Mahavairakana revered one nodded. "Although the Hinayana Buddhism has many flaws, it's stable and steady. As for the Mahayana Buddhism, it fixes the flaws of the Hinayana Buddhism. However, it's a little too eager for quick success and deviates from my Buddhist scripture. Revered one, Buddhism sees the world through Buddha's eyes. It presents the great thousand worlds and small thousand worlds to the human eye. There are no flaws or flaws. The only flaw and flaw is the human eye." The Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled and said, "The revered one is too benevolent. It's too difficult to achieve perfection. Yes, if that's the case, I'll preach the Mahayana Tripitaka scripture to all the Buddhas." The Mahavairakana revered one nodded. However, the Mahavairakana revered one was surprised. He looked at the Manjushri Bodhisattva and smiled. "Dipankara archaic Buddha, do you want me to preach the Manjushri Bodhisattva first?" "Haha, that's not necessary." The Dipankara archaic Buddha shook his head and said, "Since the Mahayana Buddhism of the revered one is to be preached, it must be spread to the blessed lands. What about the hidden immortal continent? What about the 1,000 demons sacred realm? This disciple isn't talented, but I'm willing to make a great wish." The Manjushri Bodhisattva immediately realized and hurriedly bowed. The Dipankara archaic Buddha waved his hand and said, "You've already attained enlightenment. Don't snatch any more merit." This disciple. The Manjushri Bodhisattva was stunned. The Mahavairakana revered one was enlightened and nodded slightly. Namo Wisdom Manjushri Bodhisattva. The Mahavairakana revered one remained silent for a while and said, "This disciple is here." The Manjushri Bodhisattva put his palms together and said, I have the Mahayana Tripitaka scripture, and I want to preach it to the hidden immortal continent. However, this scripture is precious. If I preach it casually, people will definitely look down on it. The Mahavairakana revered one said word by word, "You need to search the entire blessed lands for someone who can preach the scripture. Ask him to come to my Thunder Sound temple to obtain the scripture. This person bears the heavy responsibility of obtaining the scripture. If he succeeds, he will receive billions of merit. If you attain enlightenment, you will also receive 100,000 merit as the Manjushri Bodhisattva." This disciple obeys the revered one. The Manjushri Bodhisattva was really confused. He really didn't understand why the Mahavairakana revered one would suddenly give him such a Buddhist decree. "You can go now." Before the Manjushri Bodhisattva asked any more questions, he said, "After I figure it out, I'll preach the Buddhist decree the next time I preach." Yes, this disciple understands. The Manjushri Bodhisattva hurriedly bowed. However, when he stood up, the Mahavairakana revered one's golden body had already disappeared. In front of him was the Dipankara archaic Buddha who was smiling at him. Dipankara archaic Buddha. The Manjushri Bodhisattva's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Please teach me." The Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled slightly. His mouth moved as if he didn't say anything. However, the Manjushri Bodhisattva heard it clearly. It was the Dipankara archaic Buddha's heart connection. This heart connection only had 3 words: Ananda, Amitabha. The Manjushri Bodhisattva smiled slightly. When he turned around, his golden body slowly disappeared. The Dipankara archaic Buddha looked at the empty Thunderclap Temple's great hall, then at the Maitreya Buddha's empty seat. He let out a slight sigh and muttered, "Sigh, another sutra seeking." Just as the Buddha light was about to disappear, a calm voice resounded. "Dipankara archaic Buddha, what do you mean by that? Does the revered one not know?" The Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled faintly. "When I was in my 4th life, the revered one was in his 3rd life. Wasn't it the so-called Great Tang Empire? That Eastern victory proud comes to the divine lands, a stone monkey." The Dipankara archaic Buddha's words were like flowing water. However, his words revealed the secrets of Buddhism. -12. Chapter 35:01. Xiaohua naturally didn't know that it was the powerful Mahavairakana revered one's thoughts that made him vigilant, and said that he had entered the space. He stood in the void with a frown and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye to carefully examine his surroundings. Similar to what he thought, although the nearby space had already begun to collapse, it hadn't completely collapsed. If Xiaohua insisted on entering, the chances of finding a way to return to the hidden immortal continent were still very high. Xiaohua closed his Dharma eye and released his Buddhist sense and divine sense. After exploring for a moment, he made a decision in his heart. Lightning flashed around Xiaohua's body. He used his most proficient lightning escape technique and rushed into the depths of the space. When he used the lightning escape technique, Xiaohua was delighted. Ever since he formed his nascent soul in the void, he had always been pretending to be a monk in the pure land of ultimate bliss. He had never truly used the imperial lightning escape technique. Even in the profound water palace, he had only used it for a little while and didn't see much progress. Today, when he used the heaven and earth escape technique, his speed immediately soared. The lightning around his body overflowed like water and wrapped around Xiaohua's entire body. Moreover, the lightning seemed to have left Xiaohua's body, making him feel as if he had a pair of wings on his back. Wonderful! Thunder tranquility, thunder movement, and even thunder ascension. At this moment, this Xiao has reached the limit of thunder movement. I estimate that it won't take long for me to enter the thunder ascension realm. Lightning travel 3 realms, you really don't know how arrogant you are. Xiaohua clapped his hands and laughed. He knew in his heart that after he became a nascent soul, the inner cores of the male and female lightning beasts merged into his nascent soul. His nascent soul could control heavenly lightning as if it was at its fingertips. It was inevitable that his lightning escape technique would make great progress. The joy of the lightning escape technique's improvement was still small. Xiaohua was the happiest when he flew leisurely in the void that was close to the space. Previously, Xiaohua already knew that his sense of direction in the void was unparalleled. However, when he entered the void again, he truly understood his own ability. Having this sense of direction in the void gave him a greater sense of accomplishment than any other kind of sacred art he cultivated. This was the only innate ability that Xiaohua had discovered so far. Every time he flew into a void passage and saw that it had collapsed, he would immediately retreat without hesitation. Looking at the choices of 3 or 4 forks in front of him, he didn't need to think at all. Just by looking at these forks with his naked eye, he could immediately determine which one he could take, which one might take him around, and which one was the closest. Of course, because the spatial network was collapsing one after another, Xiaohua's judgment of the integrity of the passage might be wrong. However, he had never failed to use tricks like taking a detour or taking a shortcut. Xiaohua didn't know if it was because the spatial network had collapsed for a long time, or if it was because of Xiaohua's instincts, but after flying for several days, he didn't encounter any special danger. The strange insect didn't appear, the strange flame didn't appear, and the ordinary spatial collapse basically couldn't do anything to Xiaohua. On this day, just as Xiaohua was feeling immensely proud of himself, his tail wagging in the air, he suddenly stopped, slapped his own forehead, and said with a smile, "Damn it, it's true that people are in high spirits when encountering happy events, but even if it's high spirits, it can't neglect proper business. Although this place is a spatial network and can't be considered as the true void, but now that I've reached the depths of the spatial network, it should be about the same as the void, right? Xian mentioned the secret of Heaven's heart. I should be able to check it out right here, right?" Thinking of this, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the broken tortoise shell that G-Man from Meng Mountain's Baccarat stockade immediately appeared in the void. As soon as the tortoise shell entered the void, it immediately flashed with a 5-colored brilliance, and that brilliance was like an oval-shaped halo emerging from the tortoise shell. As the halo emerged, a dark green heart-shaped object flew out from the tortoise shell, and at the same time, the tortoise shell immediately turned into a dark green scroll. Eh? It can be like this? Xian didn't deceive me. Xiaohua was very excited and overjoyed, but he didn't dare to be careless. He slapped his own forehead, and a golden and crimson brilliance rushed out, and the other 2 heavens' hearts appeared. The dark green heaven's heart was attracted by these 2 brilliances, and cheerfully flew into it. These 3 heavens' hearts spun in the air, as if they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and even the 3 brilliances flickered rapidly, and then the 3 heavens' hearts disappeared into Xiaohua's forehead. After collecting the 3rd heaven's heart, Xiaohua took out the tortoise shell that Xian gave him and the tortoise shell that he obtained. Sure enough, the 3 tortoise shells all emitted a 5-colored brilliance. Xian's tortoise shell turned into a golden scroll, and Xiaohua's tortoise shell turned into a crimson scroll. In particular, the brilliance of these 3 scrolls attracted each other, and the 5-colored halo of the 3 scrolls slowly rotated, gradually overlapping, and the 3 scrolls also flew together, fusing into a 3-colored scroll. Haha, isn't this the so-called heavenly scroll? Xiaohua was overjoyed. Xian didn't mention this before. However, Xiaohua didn't care at this time, and with a grab of his hand, the 3-colored scroll fell into his hand. However, when Xiaohua flipped through the book, a strange expression appeared on his face again. This was because the scroll was completely blank. Not to mention the inscriptions he was looking for, there wasn't even a single ordinary word. It was like a wordless heavenly scroll. Damn it! Xiaohua immediately understood why Xian didn't say anything. He could even guess the gloating expression on Xian's face when she found out that he had opened the heavenly scroll in the void. Yes, Xian had this heavenly scroll for who knows how long. Looking at the things that Xian prepared to enter the profound water palace, it was clear that Xian's scholarly family's background was very deep. Even Xian, who had such a background, was helpless against this wordless heavenly scroll, so how could Xiaohua see through it? No wonder this guy was so generous! Xiaohua secretly curled his lips. So this thing is a piece of trash. With that thought in mind, Xiaohua released his divine sense, Buddhist awareness, and soul awareness in succession, but they were all to no avail. In the end, he opened his delirium dharma eye, but unfortunately, all he saw was a tortoise shell. He couldn't even see the heavenly scripture, let alone the words. Forget it. I'm afraid the opportunity hasn't come yet. Xiaohua shrugged and prepared to send the heavenly scroll into the space. However, the moment he raised his hand, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. A trace of a smile appeared on his face, and then he closed his eyes. The nascent soul in his lower dantian emerged from the top of his head. The nascent soul entered the void and immediately revealed itself. This guy actually stood on top of Xiaohua's head and stretched lazily. He opened his small mouth and yawned as if he had finally arrived home. Then, with a wave of his small hand, the heavenly scroll fell into his hand. Ha! When the nascent soul's gaze fell on the three-colored heavenly scroll, he let out a burst of wild laughter. That laughter was extremely lewd. Little Xian! You are very wrong! The nascent soul laughed and shouted. You think that if you can't see it, others can't see it? This Zhao's naked eyes and Dharma eyes can't see it, but this nascent soul can. 5 cheese unifications. This is the true cultivation method of 5 cheese unifications. Rumble. Just as Xiaohua was laughing wildly, a thunderous sound could be heard coming from the void within 300 meters. The grayish-white color was like 10,000 snakes dancing wildly, and the entire void passage was rapidly collapsing. Damn it! It must be Xian's resentment. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly let his nascent soul return and urged his flying technique to rush forward. Of course, the stingy Xiaohua wouldn't let go of this rare opportunity in the void. He called out the green-robed Xiaohua again and let him control his nascent soul and lie on top of his head to read the wordless heavenly scroll. The Black Cloud Ridge was still the same Black Cloud Ridge. The thick mist of the Black Cloud family's patriarch lingered around the mountain ridge. There were still a few merchants passing through the area, trembling in fear. These merchants were surrounded by bodyguards. Similarly, these bodyguards were also extremely vigilant. They held weapons in their hands and were ready to fight at any moment. These merchants also had no choice. Some goods could be taken a detour, some goods were urgent, and the money they could earn was also great. It was worth the risk. However, their worries became a joke at this time. This was because no matter if it was Black Wind Ridge, Emo Cloud Ridge, or Lion Rock, the demons of these 3 factions had no time to pay attention to them because they were all gathered in the depths of Black Wind Ridge. In the depths of the Black Wind Ridge that was covered by the black clouds, there was a mountain ridge that was 1,000 feet in size. Thousands of birds were densely packed in the sky. These birds had different appearances. Some were eagles, some were condors, and some were hawks, kites, vultures, harriers, ospreys, falcons, owls, and many more. However, all of them had large bodies and were abnormally ferocious. As their wings flapped, they blew away the black clouds and even blocked the sunlight in the sky. Looking at the ground, there were also all kinds of ferocious beasts. Some were tigers, some were leopards, some were lions, some were wolves, some were elephants, and some were rhinoceroses. Some of these ferocious beasts were in human form while others were in beast form. However, each of them held a weapon in their hands and were lined up in a neat formation. Although some of the ferocious beasts were roaring, even more ferocious beasts were waiting for orders in an extremely orderly manner. In front of the birds in the sky, a golden eagle that was 100 feet in size stood lazily in the air. This eagle's body was covered with shining golden feathers. Each feather was a foot long. The golden eagle's wings were not spread out. On its huge head, a circle of white feathers stood upright, looking like a white crown. About 1,000 feet to its left, there was also a lion that was even larger than this one standing there. This lion's appearance was even more strange. Its entire body was actually pure white, far from the usual brownish yellow. Moreover, on both sides of the lion's ferocious head, there were 2 slightly smaller lion heads. These two lion heads had their eyes tightly shut, as if they were asleep. This white lion's eyes were filled with ferocity and a trace of disdain as it coldly looked ahead. -12. Chapter 35:02. The golden eagle and white lion were several hundred feet away from the two demons. The one standing in the air was naturally the black bear spirit. At this moment, the black bear spirit had a helpless expression. The magic wand in his hand was dragged behind him weakly. His two small eyes scanned the sky and then looked at the ground. He opened his mouth and said, "King Golden Eagle, King Myriad Lion, are the two of you tired of living? My Black Wind Ridge has always minded our own business with Yun Ridge and Lion Rock. This King's Black Wind Ridge is the smallest in the Black Cloud Ridge. May I know why the two great kings are suddenly interested in my Black Wind Ridge?" The black bear spirit said to himself. His expression was very cautious. The demon cloud under his feet rolled slightly, as if he felt that something was wrong and was about to escape. Unfortunately, neither the lazy golden eagle nor the cold white lion had any intention of replying. The black bear spirit could only say, "AI, today is already the 100th day. I really don't understand. What is the real reason for the two of you to surround my Black Wind Ridge? This king is the earliest king of Black Wind Ridge, right? This king only gave the throne to King Wancho because he was in the prime of his life. However, he actually forgot his roots and wanted to harm this king. This king had no choice but to kill him. Could it be that the two kings had a particularly good relationship with him and are here to avenge him? Caw!" The golden eagle's eyes were originally slightly closed. At this moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes shone brightly. The black bear spirit was so scared that he trembled. He activated the demon cloud under his feet and instantly fled more than 10 feet away. "Black bear spirit!" The golden eagle laughed and said, "You said this on the first day I came. After that, you said it every day. Don't you feel tired of it? Don't you understand why I am here? Why do you need me to say it clearly? You and I are both demons. We both know it." The black bear spirit said with a wronged expression, "King Golden Eagle, you are a 9-headed bird in the sky. How can I compare to you? Back then, didn't Old Bear find a flat bird to be his king because he wasn't smart enough? Oh, I am not the king of innuendo. Don't think too much. You're right, you and I are demons, we're different from the stinky scholars of the hidden immortal continent. We should say what we should say, don't speak in riddles. 100 days ago, you and the myriad lion kings suddenly joined forces to attack my Black Wind Ridge. Why exactly did you do that? This old bear has always felt that we came to the hidden immortal continent to be demons and that life is not easy. Yes, it is what the scholars often say. Originally, there is no need to be so anxious to destroy each other. That was why this old bear endured time and time again. Even if I had to give up my cave and retreat to this place, I did not want to be enemies with you all. But you all don't have the awareness of being demons, attacking my Black Wind Ridge from all sides. Roar! Seeing that the black bear spirit was being so long-winded, the white lion opened its mouth and a gust of wind blew within 100 feet radius. The lion's roar shook the mountains. Roar, roar! The ferocious beasts all roared together with the white lion's roar. It was a scene of chaos. Black Bear! The white lion's voice was very majestic, rolling like thunder. This is the first time this king has spoken, and it will also be the last time. My Black Wind Ridge is the world of demons. You can let King Wancho be the king, or King Snowbat be the king, but you can't let a human be the king. You have always been a coward, this king has long seen through you. If not for the fact that your existence is still meaningful, this king would have already eaten you. Since you have spoken so clearly, as a demon, this king will also be honest with you. What kind of array is on the mountain behind you? Since when did your Black Wind Ridge have a Dao sector ray protecting it? Who set it up? Ayaya. Myriad Lion King. The black bear spirit hurriedly smiled. You've finally spoken. Look at what you're saying. How can my Black Wind Ridge compare to Moyun Ridge and Lion Rock? You have a strong army and no one dares to offend you. My Black Wind Ridge will be in trouble if there's even the slightest disturbance. That's why this king invited an unknown Tao sect cultivator to set up an array for my Black Wind Ridge. I'm afraid that something unexpected will happen and my Black Wind Ridge will be able to escape this calamity. Unknown Tao sect cultivator? Hee hee, Black Bear, you're really lying through your teeth. The boy from Moyun Ridge and Lion Rock joined forces to attack for 10 whole days and still couldn't do anything about it. How could it be set up by an unknown Tao sect cultivator? The Golden Condor King laughed coldly. How about this? This king won't say anything. Invite that cultivator out and let this king take a look. Ayaya! The Black Bear Spirit cried out in surprise. Why is the Golden Condor King suddenly interested in a Tao sect cultivator? You should have said so earlier. Since you wanted to see this cultivator, you didn't have to surround my Black Wind Ridge, did you? If you had said so earlier, this king wouldn't have had to be so worried for the past 100 days. Where is he? The White Lion was clearly impatient and asked coldly. He left long ago. The Black Bear Spirit spread his hands and laughed bitterly. Both kings are right. This Black Wind Ridge is my world. What is a cultivator doing in Black Wind Ridge? He left long ago. Both kings, even if we don't meet the Hermit Seeker, let's quickly retreat. This king will also return to the cave residence with a group of people. With that, the Black Bear Spirit clapped his hands and prepared to fly back. Caw! The Golden Condor cried out. Everyone says that the Black Bear Spirit is cowardly. This king thinks that your guts are bigger than the heavens. You want to dismiss the boy from Moyun Ridge and Lion Rock with just a few words? Aren't you going to invite us into your array to take a look? The Black Bear Spirit scratched his head and laughed in an extremely naive manner. Both kings have already occupied this old bear's nest. What haven't you seen? What else do you want to see in the array? Of course, if both kings are sincere, then you can dismiss the boy under you first. This king will open the array and invite both of you in. What's there to see in your broken nest? This king doesn't even want to take a look. The Golden Condor laughed coldly. Seeing that you have been working hard to greet this king every day, this king will make things clear to you. Invite all the people in your Black Wind Ridge who are not demons out, and we will retreat immediately. Especially the cultivator who helped you set up this array. Sigh. Hearing that the Golden Condor King had finally revealed his intentions, the Black Bear Spirit's expression turned serious. He shook his head slightly and said, Golden Condor, White Lion, this old bear knows that his strength is not as good as yours. Furthermore, this old bear is also cowardly. There are some things that small demons like you and I can't interfere in. In particular, this old bear will also give you a piece of advice. When judging a person, you have to look at their heart. Don't sell your life for someone else's promise. Sometimes, what you are selling may be your own life. Even if this old bear is unlucky, can you, Golden Condor and White Lion, be free? I don't believe it. Old bear, I didn't think that you would dare to say this to us. It turns out that there are times when you are bold. The Golden Condor King laughed and spread his wings. They were actually hundreds of feet wide. As his wings flapped, golden light flashed. However, the Golden Condor King's tone was even more arrogant. This king came today to see what kind of cultivator gave you the courage to look like. I want him to set up the same array for this king's Moyun Ridge. Forget it. The Black Bear Spirit saw the Golden Condor King spread his wings and hurriedly waved his hand. He flew up the mountain and shouted, This king will not waste any more words with you. You can attack or surround me if you want. This king is going to find a female bear to look at the stars. Seeing that the Black Bear Spirit was so alert, the Golden Condor King glanced at the silent White Lion and smiled bitterly. The Black Bear Spirit flew close to the mountain ridge, and a circle of light flashed around its body. Its body twisted strangely and disappeared. The mountain ridge was still the same as before. Not even a blade of grass on the mountain moved. Myriad Lion King, this Black Bear Spirit is so slippery. He did not reveal anything at all. The Golden Condor King said helplessly to the Myriad Lion King. The Myriad Lion King nodded. This black bear spirit is famous for his cowardice. For the past 100 days he has been very careful every day. It seems like he wants us to slack off. Every time he comes out, he will not be more than 500 feet away from the array. With your flying speed, you will not be able to do anything to him. It seems like the black bear spirit is still relying on this Dao sect array. It seems like we can only break this array to achieve our goal. The Golden Condor King looked at the mountain and said awkwardly, "But our boy has been attacking this array for more than 10 days. There is no effect at all. Even if we do it ourselves, we may not succeed." At this point, the Golden Condor King lowered his voice and said, "Who is the cultivator who set up the array for the black bear spirit? Why do they have to force this person out?" The black bear spirit's words these few days have made this king nervous. To be able to set up such an array is not an ordinary cultivator. Let's not get into trouble. Humph, what trouble can we get into? The White Lion King sneered. Hiding in the array for more than 100 days and not daring to come out. What kind of famous cultivator can he be? Besides, even if this cultivator has some tricks up his sleeve, can he compare to them? Indeed. The Golden Condor King shrunk his neck, the white crown on his head slanted. No matter how powerful that cultivator is, he is just one person. How many nails can he make if he is made of iron? This king has seen how powerful that group of people is. If you and I don't listen, I am afraid we will be killed by them immediately. Sigh. Hearing this, the Myriad Lion King looked embarrassed and sighed. You and I have been flaunting our strength in the Black Cloud Ridge for so many years, but who knew that there were so many people hiding in the depths of the Black Cloud Ridge? You and I have become their cover. If not for the black bear spirit, you and I would still be in the dark. The ignorant are fearless. The Golden Condor King gathered his courage. You and I are still useful now. If we were like the black bear spirit, I am afraid we would not live for long. Since those people are willing to let us be their cover, we will continue to be their cover. In the future, without the black bear spirit, you and I do not need to care too much about territory. Let's live well first. -12. Chapter 3503. The problem is that after the black bear spirit is destroyed, you and I. Myriad Lion King's eyes were filled with worry. Will it be like what Old Bear said? What's the use of thinking about this now? Golden Condor King sneered. Since the day you and I entered Black Cloud Ridge, today's fate has already been decided. Let's take it one step at a time. No matter what, we'll live longer than the black bear. Perhaps we should also consider finding a powerful backer. Myriad Lion King seemed to have thought about it and said in a low voice. Golden Condor King sneered. We are the infamous demons of Black Cloud Ridge. Those Confucian cultivators, who would fancy us? They're probably afraid that they won't be able to escape in time? Sigh, it's difficult. Myriad Lion King shook his head. The white lion fur on his body emitted a dazzling brilliance. He looked at Black Wind Ridge in the distance, and seemed to be angry. It's all because of that damn black bear. He ordered the boy to move our muscles today since we haven't attacked for a long time. Why should we attack? Golden Condor King laughed. That group of people just wanted us to surround Black Wind Ridge. They didn't say that they wanted to attack it. Why should we work so hard? Forget it. We've been surrounded for many days. Even if Black Bear has some food, it should be used up by now. Let's wait for them to rush out. Myriad Lion King thought for a while and nodded slightly. But at this moment, Golden Condor King smiled and asked, If Black Bear Spirit and the rest rush out, what should we do? Black Bear's subordinates. Kill! Don't leave a single one alive! Myriad Lion King opened his mouth. The fangs in his bloody mouth were very long. He then spat out 5 words coldly. Golden Condor King nodded. I'm afraid that's the only way. Sigh, Black Bear Spirit said it well. We're from the same root. Why be so anxious to kill each other? Bullshit. I'm a white lion. I have nothing to do with Black Bear. Myriad Lion King sneered. If you're merciful, you can go easy. Let's see how those people will deal with your MO Cloud Ridge. I didn't say anything. I just admired the poems of hidden immortal continents Confucian cultivators and casually recited a few lines. You admire? If the Confucian cultivators you ate didn't turn into feces in your stomach, they could turn into a few poems. The Myriad Lion King sneered again. Putting aside the fact that the Golden Condor King and the Myriad Lion King had surrounded the Black Wind Ridge's formation, the Black Bear spirit hurriedly retreated into the formation. What appeared before his eyes was the simple cave abode that Xiaohua had previously opened in the Black Wind Ridge. At this time, the front of the cave was divided into two parts. The upper part was the people led by the Changeling princess of Jiang country. They had set up tents and stayed at the side of the cave. The lower part was a group of demons from Black Wind Ridge. Unlike the Changeling princess people, these demons did not have any formations. They were casually scattered among the mountains. Some were lying down, some were standing, and some were in groups of 3 or 5. However, their gazes were all focused on the tents on the mountain. As for the human and demon, there were some thorns and rocks in the middle. There were even some heavily armored soldiers standing there with spears in their hands. They were very vigilant and alert. But the heavy armor and the spears in their hands could not wipe away the terror in the eyes of these soldiers. This was because they were facing the naked gazes of hundreds, or even thousands of demons. These gazes were like sharp swords, piercing through their heavy armor and landing on their bodies. It was as if their flesh was exposed to the world, and the fragrance of their flesh and blood had already spread to the mouths and noses of the demons. At the foot of the mountain, one of the fairies swallowed his saliva. In an instant, the soldiers' ears were filled with the sounds of saliva drooling. They could even see that many fairies were already drooling. Not good! The leftmost soldier saw that the few demons closest to him had slightly moved their feet and were moving towards them. He was shocked and hurriedly shouted. Quickly inform the princess, the demon can't take it anymore, humph! Fortunately, just as the soldier was about to retreat, and the few demons in front of him were about to take a step forward, the Black Bear spirit's cold snort sounded out. The few demons were shocked and hurriedly stopped in their tracks. They turned their heads and looked in other directions. The other demons also shrunk their necks and shifted their attention away from the soldiers. There were even a few demons that tried to cover it up by grabbing a few rare blades of grass from the ground and putting them into their mouths to chew on. Master has already decreed that my Black Wind Mountain Range bloodline must not eat human flesh. Who dares to make me lose face? I will kill him! The Black Bear spirit shouted fiercely. Furthermore, the soldiers of Jiang country are our comrades. If anyone dares to look at them, I will dig out their eyeballs. After speaking, the Black Bear spirit did not look at the other demons. He turned and landed in front of the cave residence, and quickly walked in. However, his face turned bitter as he faced the demons. Damn it! Without waiting for the Black Bear spirit to enter the cave, he shouted. Are you guys done with your discussion? When are we going to charge out? If we wait a few more days, before the Golden Eagle and White Lion attack, we will be in chaos. Boy under my command, do not blame me when they eat people. The inside of this simple cave residence was not much different from before Xiaohua had left. However, other than the Changeling princess, Xiao Jian and the others, there was an additional white-haired old man under Xiaohua's seat. This old man frowned slightly. Hearing the Black Bear spirit's complaints, he turned to look at Qin Xiaoyao, who was also sitting next to him, and Lu Yi, who was holding a horsetail whisk in the distance. He said, Black Wind King, do not be impatient, do not be impatient. The Black Bear spirit seemed very dissatisfied. Without waiting for the old man to finish speaking, he sat down on a seat below everyone and complained. Eldest sect Uncle Qin, go out and take a look yourself. This king's boy's subordinates look at the soldiers of Jiang country. They have been hungry for many days. If there is no more food, this king really does not know how to restrain them. This old man's name was Qin Xingyu, and he was Qin Xiaoyao's martial uncle. Long before Xiaohua left, Qin Xiaoyao had brought a few of his disciples to the Jiang country to search for the Dao sect cultivators that had yet to be killed by the Copper Pillar Gua. When the Jiang country was destroyed, the Dao cultivators of the Jiang country naturally scattered and fled far away. The so-called Second Imperial Preceptor Qin Xiaoyao did not find him, and only found Qin Xingyu, who did not have time to escape. At that time, Qin Xingyu was planning where to go with his dozens of disciples and hundreds of Dao soldiers. When he heard that there was a nascent soul cultivator in the Black Wind Ridge who wanted to help the Jiang country restore the country, Qin Xingyu was immediately overjoyed. Who did not know the merit of becoming a dragon? At this time, it was Xiaohua's time to use people, and his own help was 100 times better than the icing on the cake in the future. Therefore, Qin Xingyu did not hesitate to follow Qin Xiaoyao to the Black Wind Ridge. However, Qin Xingyu had not expected Copper Pillar Gua to be so determined to kill the Channeling princess, and even more so the Jiang family and Copper Pillar Academy's desire to kill Xiaohua. When he came to Black Wind Ridge with his Dao soldiers, all of Black Wind Ridge was surrounded by the Yao of Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Mountain. Qin Xingyu was disdainful of the Yao. He ordered his disciples to lead the Dao soldiers to resist, and had the Black Bear Spirit lead the Yao of Black Wind Ridge to attack. The Dao soldiers fought 1 against 3, and effectively blocked the flying beasts of Mo Yun Ridge. But the Yao of Black Wind Ridge were not a match for the beasts of Lion Mountain, and were defeated in one blow. Qin Xingyu had no choice but to listen to Xiao Jian's arrangements. He took the Dao soldiers and disciples to follow the Black Bear Spirit into the large formation Xiaohua had set up. Of course, Qin Xingyu had seen many large formations. At the start, he did not have much hope for this large formation. He was waiting for Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Mountain to break through the formation, and then he would lead his people to break through. But reality caused Qin Xingyu's eyes to widen. The Yao of Lion Mountain and Mo Yun Ridge had attacked for many days, but the large formation was undamaged. The Yao of Black Wind Ridge were relaxed as though they were watching a show, watching the flying beasts and beasts fight with their lives outside the formation. Seeing this, Qin Xingyu grew more curious about Xiaohua, this nascent soul cultivator he had never met before. However, after a few days of curiosity, regret came again. Xiaohua didn't come back on time. Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Rock's attack also stopped. The birds and beasts actually surrounded them but didn't attack, and just like that, they wasted their time. At the beginning, Qin Xingyu still had some confidence. He felt that a nascent soul cultivator would not go back on his word. But as time passed, 10 days passed, until 100 days had passed. He was disappointed, gave up, and was extremely vexed. What made his heart jump the most was that he had fallen into the trap of Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Mountain. Because Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Mountain did not attack, the people of Black Wind Ridge and the Yao had run out of food for a long time. Also, this mountain did not rely on water. Everyone did not even have water. The cultivators were naturally not afraid of this, but the Dao soldiers and Yao were. When the Yao of Black Wind Ridge retreated into the formation, they did not think so much and did not bring anything. The Princess of Changling and the others carried some food in the small universe bag, but it could not support the consumption of the Black Wind Ridge Yao. In the end, each person and each Yao could eat very little every day. This was why the Black Wind Ridge Yao looked at the soldiers of Jiang country with such fervent gazes. Only now did Qin Xingyu understand. How could the Yao of Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Mountain have such a plan? How did they know of the food shortage plan? There must be an expert guiding them from behind, and their target was definitely not him. Other than the Princess of Changling, it was probably that nascent soul cultivator Xiaohua. However, he could see that the other goal of the Yao's encirclement was to force Xiaohua to come out. But what made Qin Xingyu bitter was that Xiaohua's departure was very sudden and secretive. Even the majority of the Yao of Black Wind Ridge did not know. How could the Golden Eagle and White Lion know? I'm afraid that they've mistaken me for Xiaohua, and I'm the scapegoat. -12. Chapter 3504. Thinking of this, Qin Qingyu unconsciously looked angrily at Qin Xiaoyao. If this guy had not lured him here, how could he have come here? Now that the situation was hopeless, how could he resolve it? Maybe this is the only way. Qin Qingyu's gaze swept across the Changeling princess and the angry black bear spirit, and made a decision. Black bear spirit friend. Qin Qingyu laughed and said, "Aren't I and the others discussing? The situation is dangerous now, and it is time for us to work together. We cannot be anxious, and cannot be suspicious. And you discuss. This king will wait for you to decide. This king does not know how to use brains, but this king knows how to use strength." The black bear spirit waved his hand and said disinterestedly. But just as the black bear spirit hung his head in annoyance, Louis, who had been holding a horsetail whisk, suddenly opened his eyes and nodded at the black bear spirit. He smiled and said to Qin Qingyu, "Sect Uncle Qin, this one cannot come up with any ideas. I am bored here, and want to go out for a walk. Haha, little friend Lu, do as you please. This is your master's cave residence, you are the masters here." Qin Qingyu bowed slightly, making people feel that Qin Qingyu was very amiable. "Many thanks, Sect Uncle Qin." Louis bowed respectfully and slowly walked out. He walked to the black bear spirit's side and gave the black bear spirit a look. The black bear spirit blinked his small eyes to show that he understood. Then he lowered his head and soon dozed off. Fortunately, it was just a moment. He lowered his head as though he was really asleep. When he raised his head, he immediately opened his small eyes and said apologetically, Sorry, I am really tired. You discuss, I will go out and take a nap." Then, without waiting for others to say anything, he ran out while muttering, "Alas, fellow Immortal Xiao." Qin Qingyu originally wanted to whisper something to Qin Xiaoyao, but when he saw the black bear spirit, he also left. He looked around and sighed. "It seems that we have to make a decision. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid that even Lu and fellow Immortal Black Bear will have other thoughts." "Impossible!" Xiao Jian furrowed his brows and shook his head. "I can understand if others are disloyal, but these two would never do that. You can't judge a book by its cover. Who knows what others are thinking?" Qin Qingyu said with a smile. "Fellow Immortal, don't you know this? Then what does fellow Taoist Qin mean?" Xiao Jian looked at Qin Qingyu and asked, "Should we rush out of the formation and fight those birds and beasts to the death? How is this possible?" Qin Qingyu smiled faintly. "You and I are well aware of the strength of our forces. Fellow Immortal Hexiong's absence saves us the embarrassment of talking about it. The demons of the Black Wind Mountain are just a motley crew. They're not enough to accomplish anything. We're no match for those birds and beasts. What we need to do now is to figure out how to escape." "Martial uncle, how is that possible?" Qin Xiaoyao said with a bitter face. "If we could escape, would we have waited until now? If this disciple is not wrong, there must be elite soldiers of Bronze Pillar country outside Black Cloud Ridge. Even if we rush out of Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Rock's encirclement, it's unlikely we can escape Black Cloud Ridge." "Xiaoyao, you think too highly of yourself," Qin Qingyu said with a smile. "You think these demons are here for you? Cough, Your Highness, don't be too nervous. Didn't fellow Immortal Black Bears say it clearly? The Golden Eagle and White Tiger care about Senior Xiao. If it was only for Your Highness, they would not be so fanatical. Senior Qin, this one is no longer the princess of Jiang country. There is no need to call me Your Highness." The Changeling princess also had a worried frown. She smiled and said, "Actually, this one hopes that their target is me. This way, this one only needs to go out and the danger of Black Wind Mountain will be resolved immediately. There is no need to harm everyone's lives. The princess is definitely one of their targets." At the side, Xiao Jian shook his head and said, "But they are surrounding us and not attacking because they want to see our bottom line. Fellow Taoist Qin is right. There must be an encirclement outside this encirclement. But our consciousness is limited and cannot see far. We cannot see the situation outside Black Wind Mountain. In my opinion, There must be an even more powerful enemy who has set a trap for Senior Xiao. When he spoke up to hear, Xiao Jian sighed and said, Before Senior Xiao left, he set up this formation to hide us, and he instructed us to pretend to have escaped from Blackwind Ridge so that the pursuers of the Copper Pillar Kingdom would think that we've escaped. Back then, I felt that Senior Xiao's actions were unnecessary. It would have been better for us to leave Blackwind Mountain. But now that I think about it, it is easy for us to leave Blackwind Mountain, but it is difficult to escape from the pursuers of Bronze Pillar Country. Especially Chanling and the others, they will fall into the hands of Bronze Pillar Country. The reason why Senior Xiao asked us to stay here was to leave the grudge between Tong Zhuge and Jiangue for him to settle. So he can keep us alive. But he calculated wrong. We only paid attention to the movements of Bronze Pillar Country. We did not expect the spirits of Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Mountain to come. We were caught off guard. Since it's so grim, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape, right? Qin Xiaoyao was also filled with emotions as he followed Xiao Jian's words. Xiao Jian glanced at Qin Qingyu and said, That's right. I feel that we are too weak right now. The only thing we can rely on is Senior Zhao's formation. We can't break out of the encirclement easily. Breaking out of the encirclement will only consume our strength. What we need to do is wait for Senior Zhao's return. Of course, fellow Taoist Qin sent disciples to search for news of other Jian country cultivators before coming to Blackwind Mountain. If they can come, we can work together. Maybe we have a chance of survival. The other disciples. Qin Qingyu grimaced. Right now, Blackwind Mountain is likely a bait. The other disciples will only die if they come. Xiao Jian felt the same and nodded slightly in agreement. Granny Ji, Qianli, and Conli were sitting next to the Changeling princess. They followed the Changeling princess and did not speak. But from their expressions, they seemed to agree with Xiao Jian's words. The problem is not whether we are willing to escape or not. Qin Qingyu frowned again and explained. It's because the situation is more powerful than us. It's the demons of Mo Yun Ridge and Lion Rock that forced us to escape. Of course, this old man, and even the people in the cave do not care about food and water, but the other spirits and soldiers cannot. It's not like you didn't hear fellow Taoist black bears shout just now. What if those demons go crazy from hunger? Even the black bear spirit can't control them, right? Xiao Jian heard this and said with a smile, I naturally agree with Sect Uncle Qin's words. It does not conflict with I's words. Since we know where the problem is, can't we solve the problem of food and water? How to solve it? Qin Qingyu grimaced and said, Previously, we sent people to charge out, but Dao soldiers, the spirits, and even fellow Taoist Xiao, didn't you try? The Golden Eagle is extremely fast, the White Lion's abilities are impressive. No one succeeded. We were not forced to the brink before. Xiao Jian answered. Also, we sent people here and there, but forgot about the person who could escape. Fellow Taoist Xiao has a backup plan? Qin Qingyu stilled and said curiously. Xiao Jian shook his head. I do not have a backup plan. The person with the highest cultivation in this cave is Sect Uncle Qin. If Sect Uncle Qin wants to go out to find food, the Golden Eagle will not be able to stop him. Especially if the people of Blackwind Mountain prepare to break out together and move in all directions, even if the Golden Eagle can stop Sect Uncle Qin, he will not know how to stop him. No. Qin Qingyu shook his head slightly. This old man has the highest cultivation here. If the formation is broken, this old man has the power to protect the princess. But if this old man escapes and cannot return in time, if something happens to the princess, will this old man not become a sinner of Jian country? The Changeling princess heard this and stood up gracefully. She bowed respectfully and said, Elder Qin, Changeling thanks Elder again for your heart. But at this time, Changling's safety is not important. If the hundreds of pixies and soldiers could not survive, how could Changeling survive? Changeling asks Elder to risk death to charge out of the encirclement, and find enough food for the people of Black Cloud Ridge. Ah, Your Highness the Princess. Qin Qingyu still shook his head. The spirits are surrounding the mountain. This old man can easily charge out, but it will be difficult to return. This old man fears that I will fail the princess. Elder, the Changeling princess said seriously. At this time, to speak the truth, Changeling has implicated everyone. Changeling is grateful that everyone has accompanied Changeling to this day. Do not say that you have failed. It is fortunate to be able to escape with your lives. You do not owe Changeling anything. As she spoke, the Changeling princess bowed to everyone again. Granny G and the others panicked and hurriedly stood to return the bow. Qin Qingyu seemed to be thinking. After a moment, he nodded slightly and said, "If so, this old man will go all out. Let's get out first, and find food for Black Wind Mountain." "Good." Xiao Jian clapped and said, "Elder Qin should have done this long ago. I will summon the Black Bear spirit and have him give the order. Hundreds of spirits will charge out together. Elder can take advantage of the chaos to leave." And Qin Qingyu nodded. Actually, if this old man charges out of Black Cloud Ridge, food is easy to find. This old man will use at most half a day to return. Taoist Xiao, please ask Taoist Black Bear Spirit to act at night. This old man will charge when I hear the battle cries. All right, we will also lead the soldiers to charge out of the encirclement with the Black Wind Mountain spirits. Qianli and Conli could not help but agree. But just as they spoke, a soldier in black armor hurriedly charged in and shouted, "Your Highness the Princess, not good, a dozen spirits are charging." 12. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.